want to do it. You're leading. I'm just the follower today.
What? Come on.
I'm just the follower today.
We're live. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Cross Border Interviews live election night special. It is 7:03. Polls closed in Ontario, Quebec, most of the prairie provinces, actually all the prairie provinces, including Alberta, in the next half hour. Before I do get into that, I want to say this. If you are in line at 7:30 when polls close, you still have the right to vote. So please stay in line, ensure that you vote, because democracy is in action today. After 36 days of politicians telling you what they are going to do, it's your turn to tell them what to do. So with that, I want to say that polls have already closed in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland. At the last count, we are 24 Liberals, 8 Conservatives, and yes, for some strange reason, 1 Bloc Québécois, because part of Quebec actually closes in the Atlantic provinces, not in the rest of Quebec. So we are leading and elected in 1 riding for the Bloc Québécois. There have been some big surprises. And with that, I'm going to bring in the person who is my yin to my yang, my political rival as always, who comes on the show as the person who just gets my blood boiling when it comes to conservative politics, Miss Jen Sanford. Jen, how are you?
I'm good, Chris. Thanks for having me. In some circles, we just call this the voice of reason, but that's okay. You can have all that other puffery that you will. It's good to be with you this evening on this, the culmination, the last round of the Hunger Games electoral 44.
This election has been a gong show. The last 36 days have been unknown. I just want to get, before we start talking about some riding results, I want to get your initial reaction. I know we can debate over the fact if the election should have been called or not, but we are in the election. We're on election day. How do you think the leaders performed?
I think they all performed poorly. I think that was sort of the engineering from the beginning. I think the the frustration that I have is how similar this particular election has been to, like, let's say the $1 million prize on America's Got Talent. There's just been like a striking amount of similarities, which is that, it seemed to be less about like what the concrete talent was and more about like the backstory, the compelling backstory to the contestant. I feel really disappointed in the fact that we have a robust democracy and we have a robust debate commission, and we had 1 debate and it was so policed and governed that we really never really got a chance to see like how do these people intersect, and how do their values sort of come to the surface. um I'm frustrated by the state of journalism. I feel like poor questions were asked with no follow up. Everybody sort of just got a free pass. I feel like the conservatives did that thing again, like America's Got Talent, where they peaked too early versus that grind that they needed at the end. And the reason why that happened was just really the lack of substantive policy. I mean, Indigenous matters were huge in this election. We didn't talk about them. Climate change was huge. I don't remember a substantive debate about it other than they want good climate and they don't. And I think that's so disrespectful to the fact that we all sit at the spectrum very close to one another on the political scale. The only real winners in this contest were the people that really don't have any salience, and that is Maxime Bernier from the People's Party, which managed to give people an outlet for their anger, and Annamie Paul, who was basically just fighting a battle from the inside. Those 2 victories for those individual parties are of no consequence. I don't think Maxime Bernier will maintain his seat, and I don't think Annamie Paul will have this job tomorrow. So all in all, my thoughts on a pandemic election call, but I think it wasn't fruitful. Wasn't fruitful for anybody. Namely Canadians who had to vote today, and I think we're just like, oh boy.
Well, I got out and voted. I pride myself on making sure that I get out and vote. I can say with this is the first time I said this. I've lied to every single canvasser who's knocked on my door today. I spoiled my ballot. I have proof of spoiling said ballot, but I went in and I crossed an X off of every single candidate that was running. I do not
Okay,
think
so
any
why?
one of them, not one of the candidates in Calgary Skyview earned my vote. And as someone who believes in someone who has to earn my vote, none of them earned my vote. I was looked at as the husband of a political spouse. So let's try and get to me. Try to get to the husband through me. So I don't think they used me appropriately. So I did not vote. I technically voted for all the candidates. I just spoiled my ballot because none of them earned my vote. Not one of them. I can literally I can text anyone who wants to call me out on that. I will text you my ballot because I illegally took a photo of it afterwards. I did not vote.
I was going to say that's illegal.
Yep. So
okay, Chris, what would it have taken to have gotten your vote in this election then?
Someone to actually talk to me like an actual person, not like a vote. How are you going to help me personally? I'm sorry, but okay, we need to stop Aaron O'Toole from forming a government. We need to stop Justin Trudeau from forming a government. Jagmeet Singh needs to stop. We need to hold Justin Trudeau to account. None of that spoke to me. What speaks to me at the end of the day is, how are you, the candidate, one vote in Ottawa, going to help me, a small business owner, in the middle of downtown, well, not middle of downtown Calgary, but in Calgary, get ahead? And not one of them spoke to that. Not one candidate. They were all about petty politics, and I just was bored of it.
I had a similar experience here. I'm in the riding of Calgary Center, which my sparring opponent from debate night, Rob Tremblay, is part of Sabrina's campaign for the Liberal Party there. So hi, Rob. I made it to election night and you didn't. So there we be. I feel frustrated also by the lack of discourse. I also feel frustrated by the lack of choice. I represent one of the most intensive ridings in Calgary. At one point was seen as an opportunity to be a battleground because of anti-Kenny sentiment and a lot of young people moving into the riding. Calgary Center is a huge riding, and our choices were Greg McLean for the Conservatives, Sabrina Glover for the Liberals. There was an NDP candidate, although his name escapes me now.
Juan Estevez, he came on the show.
Thank you. My apologies, Juan. And also we had a candidate from the Christian
Heritage
Alliance.
Party.
Thank you. Shows how much I paid attention to my ballot. That's terrible that we didn't have a PPC and we didn't have a Maverick. Like, we're a big testing riding to really know where our sentiments lie. And we really had a lack of choice. We didn't have an independent. We didn't have, I am really surprised we didn't have a green. So that, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, you did. You had a green.
Did I?
You had Austin Mullins.
Who? Oh, right. I forgot. Austin was on my ballot. I remember because I gave him a little thought around how his GOTV was going to go today. His Get Out the Vote was going to go today. You're absolutely right. Sorry. I'm so sorry, Austin. I know he listens to this podcast, so my apologies. But I'm frustrated as a conservative voter that there wasn't a lot of choice because I do think that does consolidate the conservative vote, but it does two things. It really doesn't give us a counterfactual of where conservatives really are in the riding. And it also gives a false sense of security, I think, to the Conservative Party of Canada around the attitudes of conservatives in this riding. I voted conservative. I do have a podcast called Conservative Like Me, but I am disappointed by the lack of choice. I'm disappointed by the lack of choice that I feel I was owed as a voter.
I agree wholeheartedly. Choice is a big thing. My ballot felt like it was a freaking page long because we had the centrist party, book. We had an independent, we had a People's Party, we had a Marxist-Leninist party, we had a conservative party, NDP, Green, you name it, we had them. And none of them spoke to me. None of them. I don't know if I can say that correctly, but none of them, at the end of the day, none of my candidates spoke to me. So
yeah, I had similar dialogue in my community. People feeling really disappointed. My engagement with a conservative member, I really felt strongly did not earn my vote. He really talked about pipelines, like we're going to get pipelines. And I'm like, oh God, you got to pivot off this. Just because we're in Calgary Center doesn't, we are capable of more intellectual thought than I be the party of pipelines. It's like, listen, you talked about a lot of things on your policy in your policy book. You got to diversify and speak to those things. And when you have a party and a candidate that can't get on message and then stay on message, you're just like, oh, please go to the next door. So, while I really do hope that a conservative win is the outcome of tonight, I do so really begrudgingly. I do so a little bit begrudgingly, even in my own writing. Well, I think that's terrible to say.
I'm looking at the results that are coming in right now from Atlantic Canada, because we're still about 15 minutes away from, and there were ridings that you and I wanted to look at, and I prepared graphics for the ridings that we wanted to look at, but there's some certain ridings that I want to look at, because this is going to tell the test of time if Erin O'Toole can become Prime Minister. Right now, they have picked up or are leading in double the amount of seats in Atlantic Canada than they were in 2019. Yeah. This is huge. Yeah. This is going to be a good night for Erin O'Toole. How good is it is going to be determined by that People's Party of Canada vote.
Oh, that is not true. That is not true.
No. Okay.
Chris, that is not true. Don't start this podcast with being so very wrong, built on a false premise.
Okay, I'm going to say this. In the riding of Long Range Mountains, Gordie Hutchinson is the incumbent, the Liberal. She is leading, and she's actually been proclaimed elected. And I apologize if I'm looking down, because I'm just reading these results off my iPad as they come in. The People's Party of Canada is taking 5% of the vote away from the Conservatives. If the Conservatives would have won that 5%, they would be leading it in that riding right now.
Which operates only with the magical Disneyland-inspired assumption that all of those votes would have gone Conservative. I think what we don't look at is a lot of people would have spoiled their ballot, or they would have stayed home. Just because they voted for People's Party doesn't mean that if the absence of the People's Party was there, they would have automatically voted Conservative. I think we have to be so clear on this. Don't be Rosie Barton on this, man.
I'm not being Rosie Barton on this, but I'm being realistic, because literally in one of the safest ridings in Newfoundland, Coast of Bay's Central Notre Dame, which is a friend of mine, Scott Sims, Liberal MP since 2004, he's going down in defeat tonight. He is a well-liked MP, and if
I'm very surprised.
Exactly. But there's only 3 parties on the ballot in this election: New Democrats, Liberals, and Conservatives. No People's Party of Canada. So I'm not saying that all of the votes would have gone from the Conservatives to the People's Party of Canada. I'm just saying that the People's Party of Canada is an election story tomorrow morning. If they can hold off or stop the Conservatives from winning some seats over certain other ones, we might be heading to a Liberal minority, a smaller minority than we had last time.
You know what? There is a possibility, but I think we have to be careful to acknowledge that, yes, some of the votes that would have gone Conservative go to the People's Party because people found resonance with that. But also, I think that the tail of the tape in a couple of days will be, did People's Party bring out apathetic or lazy voters, first-time voters? I think their ability to find the fringe. I just reject this narrative that it's the complete separation or the pull apart of more fringe-like Conservatives that will then cost them a seat. I think we can be in agreement that it doesn't help them, but to say, oh my God, People's Party of Canada got 800 votes. That's 800 votes that would have gone to the Conservative Party. I don't think that there is an argument to support that. I think maybe 100 or 200, but I think that there's enough. Let's not underestimate Maxime Bernier's ability to find people and hear what I'm saying with that. Yeah.
Let's see what happens in the East. That's all I can say. I just want to announce this because this just was declared. The first Liberal cabinet minister has gone down in defeat, and that is Bernadette Jordan's, the fisheries minister in Nova Scotia, South Shore St. Margaret's. This is the first. This is going to be a bad night. This is the second pickup for the Conservatives on the island in Nova Scotia. In Cumberland Colchester, Lorraine Zand, the Liberal MP, also lost is Stephen Ellis, a family practitioner in Nova Scotia, has won that for the Conservatives. Many expect him to be the next health critic after Michelle Rempel, or if not that, the Minister of Health. Two big names down for the Liberals. This is not going to be a good night for the Liberals if this continues on a trend like this.
Well, I think we also have to look at the fact that there was another election in Atlantic Canada. We have seen some changes. We have seen some embracing of a conservative government. They ran a strong provincial campaign around real ideas, a focus on healthcare, a focus on, really bringing people to the table and having meaningful engagement. You had to expect there's going to be some bleed over. I'm wondering in Bernadette's case, her as the fisheries minister, how much that was a rebuke of how, the ongoing fisheries debate has been handled, and really what I think a community might have seen as a lack of government intervention and action to represent the Indigenous communities there. I think it might have just been what do you think, Chris?
I agree wholeheartedly. I was actually going to say that before you started talking about it.
Oh, sorry.
I think that there's a few things that were in play in this in that riding. I did not expect that the Conservatives to pick that up. To be honest, I thought the Liberals were going to keep that in the riding in their column, but it did not end up being that way. I think two things were in play in this in that riding, which was the fisheries debacle that was. Indigenous issues versus fishermen, and then also the provincial election. The provincial election has cost the Liberals 2 seats. Lauren Zane was probably going to go down in defeat tonight because that is not a Liberal seat. That is a Bill Casey seat. For those who don't know who Bill Casey is the former MP for that, who was a progressive Conservative, then an independent, then a progressive, then a conservative, then a Liberal.
Yes.
So it was a Bill Casey.
But he was always Bill Casey.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
important.
King's Hance and Scott Bryson. Scott Bryson, no matter where he went, it was always going to be a Scott Bryson seat.
Yeah, I feel that way in BC about the Stralls. Like there was Chuck Strahl, then Mark Strahl. Like it's a Strahl riding, and people are like, "Oh, it's a safe conservative riding," and I'm like, "Well, it's just a Strahl riding, really."
The one seat that I'm watching relatively close right now is Fredericton. They are still not calling
of course.
it. Jenica Atwin is behind the seat count right now, behind the vote count right now. It is flipping back and forth between Liberal and Conservative. I'm going to wait to see how this folds out. I think this is going to be one of the closest, if not the closest election ridings in the Atlantic provinces.
Yeah, this is Chris. When you asked me like what ridings do you want to watch, give me east to west. Fredericton was at the top of my list. Jenica's Atwin's defection from the Greens and into have to watch these ridings because other than party affiliation, I think the thing that pollsters never really get right is that people really don't like the attitudes of we decided what party you represent. I mean, people really do vote color before they vote for the person. They really vote along their party lines. I mean, my podcast is not called Aaron O'Toole Like Me. It's called Conservative Like Me, and it will navigate over however many leaders we need until we can get the outcome that we want. And I think people do pay attention to that because, I mean, I just did it now. I couldn't name the people in my own riding because I was so focused on the color of their party affiliation. And so, when candidates decide like, oh, I know what kind of party I want to represent, voters can have an ability to say, no, we decide who we want. And just because you want to be a Liberal now doesn't mean we follow you because we want this to be the Atwin riding. So there is always a little bit of pushback energy, I think, that pollsters fail to capture.
Now, Jennifer can't see this, but on your screen right now is the list of the candidates who are running, because I am such a graphics nerd, because this is what I do on my spare time, because, I have nothing else to do except watch for the Super Bowl of Super Bowls. Jenica Atwin is the Liberal. Andrea Johnson is currently in the lead. I don't have the numbers up because that would be just way too much confusion for me. And let's be honest, you do not want to see me with numbers. It just does not work out. I'm a soft Liberal, so you just don't want me around numbers, as Justin Trudeau would say. NDP Sean Oldenburg is running third right now with 15%. Nicola Byrne, who the Greens had hope. The Greens had hope that this was going to go back to their column because of how pissed off people were going to be at Jenica Atwin. The Green Party's vote in Atlantic Canada has been decimated. I am seeing, I think it was last time I checked was 11% swing from the last election. 11% loss, and I thought it would go to the Liberals, but it's not. It's splitting across party lines. Some are going to the Conservatives, some are going to the Liberals, some are going to the NDP. This election is not going to be done in Ontario, I don't think.
Just coming back to the Fredericton riding on Nicole O'Byrne, I think the hot wash that I'll be interested to see from the Green Party, because it's been so focused on the leader and the infighting of that party. This was a riding I think they could have won. The question I would be asking the O'Byrne campaign is, how good did you mobilize your vote, especially in early voting, right? A record number of early voting. Let's be clear in this election. People got out and voted early. How good was your GOTV, which for those lay people, get out the vote. And then did you put money here? Like, did you put money in this riding? How good was the signage? How good were the ads? How good were the thought leadership pieces? Like, to me, some of the griping that I have about the Green Party in this election is that the only way to counter an infighting narrative, first of all, is to have a high performing leader on a national stage. And I think Anna May Paul did that in both the French and the English debate. And then, do you have enough mobilization with your candidates for them to demonstrate the thought leadership and to fight for the ridings that they can win? And that's where I'm worried that they fell apart on the second leg of that stool.
I agree. I know Anna May Paul stuck close to home in Toronto Centre during this campaign. In the last about 4 days of the campaign, she decided, hey, now I think the Green Party has enough money that we can do a national tour, and we're going to try and do it in PEI, which, as we've seen, all 4 seats in PEI have gone back to the Liberal column, which is not a big shock.
Yeah, that was just a misappropriation of money and time.
Tomorrow morning, the Greens have to have a very hard talk with themselves. Austin, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, to the people who are, what happened? What happened with the Green Party? If Atlantic Canada is any indication on how the Greens are going to do tonight, Elizabeth May's in for a fight. And that
don't you think that this is that same thing where Elizabeth May's riding is Elizabeth May's riding? You think that she could be out of it tonight?
I think she could. 11% is a huge drop. I could be wrong. I've been known to be wrong before, so let's see what happens. So we are still waiting. We are 4 minutes away from polls closing from Quebec to Alberta and Northwest Territories and good old Nunavut. BC and Yukon do close an hour after that. So hopefully we'll have some indication on how this night is going to go before then. But let's be honest, I'm in for the long haul. I hope Jen is as well.
I'm definitely in for the long haul. And I have to say that in order to keep the graphics going, I like to stay with you. I'm also having to watch myself simultaneously on YouTube, and it's freaking me out. How come you're so big and I'm so little? I got to fix this.
Yes,
I got to fix this.
But I feel like I'm talking down to you.
I know. Why am I so little? This is so weird. I got to pull my screen toward.
But now you got the Maverick. Now you got the Maverick sign behind me.
Is that what that is? I was going to ask you what that is behind you.
Throughout the night, you will be seeing the signs behind me change. That people were wondering why I wanted signs from campaigns, because throughout the night, for those who are watching, we're going to be taking a break periodically throughout the night just to get refreshed, go to the washroom, make sure that we can not fall asleep by getting coffee. For me, green caffeine. You realize you're live doing that, right?
I am live doing it. This is podcasting live. I feel like this is right.
So whatever. Yes, this is going to be changing throughout the night. I'm looking forward to it. Moncton just got called. St. John Rothesay, sorry. Wayne Long, incumbent, defeated Mel Norton. That's a shock.
So
Traditionally,
if you're paying it,
go ahead.
oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to say if you're paying it. Oh, go ahead, Chris. Go. No, you go. This last I checked, this is your podcast. Go ahead.
It's our podcast. Go.
You heard it here first. I was going to say, so if you're keeping track of the tail on the tape so far as we come out of the Atlantic provinces and head into the major, the larger provinces, we've got Liberals having lost 3 seats that they held in the last election. We have Conservatives gaining 5, a New Democrat loss of 1, and a Green loss of 1. So far it's looking very good for Erin O'Toole. And can we now talk about that hilarious Erin O'Toole anecdote that just happened about an hour ago on CBC? I have to say that in the riding of is it Calgary Shepherd? Yes. Everything that was coming from the Conservative candidate there was about defunding the CBC. For some reason, they felt the people of Forest Lawn, Dover are just absolutely done with the CBC. And Rosie Barton on her CBC coverage goes to watching Erin O'Toole and his wife Rebecca and Jack and Molly, their kids, watching the coverage. And what are they watching? The CBC. And I felt like such a full circle moment for this election that I just thought I'm going to be, what I honestly felt was that, like, in the first hour of this podcast, we're going to be sharp. We're going to be asking sharp questions. And by the 4th hour of this, I'm going to be like, hey, Chris, do you think that washers and dryers are work friends or real friends? Like, I just feel like this will get right off the rails if this continues.
Okay.
So
by hour 4, we'll bring Kyle on. Kevin on, and we'll talk about your dating life for the last 4 hours until BC covers it, because
that's right.
There are literally ridings going back and forth right now, and the one I want to talk about, getting back to the election, why we're here, is Sydney Victoria. Jamie Battisti is the first Micmac MP for all of Canada, Indigenous. He had some controversy in 2019 around sexual posts that he made about women. He won, and it looks like he's leading right now with 575 votes, but it's going back and forth between him and Eddie Orwell, who is a former MLA for Nova Scotia, a very popular MLA. So this is a riding I'm watching. If the Liberals can keep this riding, you might be able to blunt some of the growth that is Erin O'Toole. So the other one that I've watched, go ahead.
It's just going to be 905. Like, I think the 2 areas of this electoral map that I'm watching are not, I want to see what Toronto's going to do, like, and surround, that's going to be the whole show. I want to know how effective François Legault was in persuading Quebecers to vote for Erin O'Toole. And I want to know what's going to happen in the BC Lower Mainland because of the electoral, the way in which these elections are called. There is a dogfight that is going to happen between the Liberals and the Conservatives in the Lower Mainland. All of those Cloverdale, Langley City, Langley, Aldergrove, Surrey, White Rock, Port Coquitlam, all of those ridings are up for grabs. And there is funny things happening in all of those ridings. And I think that those are the 3 pockets.
So
man,
just to interrupt, I just want to let our viewers know that polls have now closed in Quebec, Ontario, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, and Nunavut and Northwest Territories. So polls have now closed in the majority of Canada. Over 200 seats are going to be coming in the next few hours. We are going to be digesting this. We're going to be talking about this. We're still following some of the stories out in Atlantic Canada because not all ridings have been called yet. But I just want to let everyone know that it is 7:32 here in Alberta, and polls have now closed in the majority of Canada. Election 2021 is now in the books. It is now up to the scrutineers, the poll counters, and the vote watchers, or the poll clerks, to count, and it's in their hands. So let the games begin.
Absolutely. And let's also talk about what we are and are not going to do. One of the things that I will come to Chris's writing and be violent is if he does that thing where he's like, oh, conservatives or liberals are leading, and it's like one poll of 400 reporting.
No.
I hate that. That's what drives me crazy about coverage. They're like, oh, it's an early win for, Jenica Atwin. And I'm like, she's got 4 votes. One poll is closed. So I think we really need to know what the meat of this thing looks like.
Polls are now so for those who haven't been watching the actual mainstream media, because our coverage is so much better and it's going to be awesome, and we're going to do this every election from now until whenever we basically die. There was over 1 million votes asked for mail-in ballots.
Yeah,
those are not being counted until tomorrow, so they do not get even touched until tomorrow. The ones I want to talk about, I think there was about 800,000 votes that were done advance vote. They could have been opened an hour before polls closed. So we are going to see an influx of numbers in the first few minutes because people have already counted. But do not think that those are outliers. Do not think those are the actual results, because those are just advance votes and they traditionally sway heavily to one party over another.
Yes. And the other thing I will say, because it's only 7:34, is that even though the polls have closed, just like Chris said, if you're in line, stay in line. You can vote. If you are in line at 7:30, and if they tell you that you can't, hold your ground. You can vote. You can vote.
You are even if you're standing outside the polling booth, as long as you are in line, you stay in line. You hold your ground. This is Alamo, this is my Alamo, and I'm going to.
But poll workers are great. They'll know. They'll know. They'll let you vote. You'll be okay. You'll be all right. Just hold your ground and say, this is my right under Elections Canada.
Exactly. Listen to Jen. Jen knows what she's talking about. Okay, so we are watching results come in now. I want to talk about the 905-416 for a bit.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Because that is the area that you and I have both said that this is going to be where the election is going to either be a minority or a minority for another party. Because if the Liberals lose enough seats in the 416-905 area, Aaron O'Toole is cruising to become a minority prime minister. I highly doubt that, but we will see where the cards land. So first off, just for those who are watching, Durham is the riding which Aaron O'Toole, I literally just froze my computer. Durham is the riding of Aaron O'Toole, leader of the Conservative Party. So that is an area that I'm going to be watching. The other area, I'm just going to pull it up here because is Whitby. Whitby. And I'm seeing Jen look at me why are you looking at Whitby? Whitby is Selena Cesar Chavez's old riding.
Yes.
She came out and half-heartedly endorsed the Conservative Party. Not really a full endorsement, but not a not a full endorsement, but not a half-assed endorsement. She endorsed. Aaron O'Toole has spent basically 5 days in this riding wanting to pick it up. Ryan Turnbull won it in 2019. He's running for re-election. This is a riding that I'm going to be watching very closely. Yourself?
Yeah, I share those same concerns. I'm really interested in the amount of time that Aaron O'Toole spent in that area to yield a return on investment. I think it's important to note that this was also met with a little bit of ire from Alberta. There was a very popular tweet today from someone who said, I want you to know as you go to the polls that Aaron O'Toole and Jagmeet Singh did not step into Calgary. And that matters.
Who would have said that? I wonder.
Who would have said that?
I wonder. They never stepped a foot in Calgary. Justin Trudeau came here, let it be for 10 minutes. He basically got off the plane, waved, and got back on the plane and left. But Aaron O'Toole not showing up in Calgary, that says something to me.
But I mean, amid the growth of the PPC, and I think what we're also not talking about is the growth of Maverick Party, which I do believe is a threat to the Conservative Party. Amid the growth of those two parties, I think for Aaron O'Toole to make the case And it would have been a pretty easy case to make. I mean, that rhetoric control isn't hard to say. We split the vote these three different ways. We invite Justin Trudeau, back to Rideau Hall to govern. So, be strategic with your choices, and let me talk about how, this is what I do. You couple that with a lot of misses in Alberta, like that. Remember that ad that we were so mean about, where he was just like, I worked in oil and gas for 5 minutes and look at my cowboy boots and I'm like you. And we're like, oh, don't do it.
I'm wearing a cowboy hat.
This
I'm
video,
Albertan.
this video was produced in Toronto, clearly. So he had a bunch of missteps. And then, of course, as we got closer to the election, the growing ire about, Jason Kenney's management provincially as a conservative in COVID, didn't help him and really derailed his campaign. I loved the ad, the editorial cartoon from the Spectre that I shared on social media. You reach me at the Jen Sanford, Jen N, where it showed Jason Kenney tripping Aaron O'Toole as he reached the finish line of this election. And I think that's a really strong visual representation of what did happen. So, but that being said, like, this is where your home is. This is your base. This is conservative land.
And not even spending time in Saskatchewan. Like, he basically did a hop, skip, and jump through the prairie provinces, spent time in the lower mainland. Like, I think they've taken a calculated risk by saying we're going to blow off the prairie provinces, because Andrew Scheer was here every other week, it seemed like. But Aaron O'Toole said, we're going to spend more time in lower mainland, 905, 416, and Montreal than we're going to spend in the prairie provinces, because no matter what, they will stick with me no matter what I say. And I think it's that age old thing about get a vote versus lose a vote. I used to say this about Andrew Scheer. Since you brought it up, I'll lean into it. One of the things that became a threat to the campaign of Andrew Scheer was that people were like, okay, I think I'm going to vote for him because I'm a conservative. And then they met him and they're like, oh no, this guy has the charisma of a hemorrhoid, and they lost the vote. So actually, the more they put him in front of people, the more it cost him the ability to be elected. So that gets in the mind of campaigns around, like, maybe seen and not heard. Like, the assumption that we have your vote is a better alternative than putting you in front of these voters and letting them say, you know what, I actually do have other conservative choices and I'm going with them. And it actually, backfires for them. So I wonder how much that was a calculated risk. Not that I'm not thrilled with the amount of charm of Aaron O'Toole, but I do think he has charm compared to the, plastic cardboard cutout that was Andrew Scheer. And Justin Trudeau, let's be honest, he was a cardboard cutout and still is half the time. Basically, it's whoever's behind him is talking.
But I think the interesting about Trudeau is that his campaign was able to tap into the idea that George Shahal is a popular municipal leader, city councillor in the city of Calgary, and that area is ripe to flip with someone like that at the helm, and to give that a little bit of a push, I think doesn't hurt.
So, as we are the Alberta podcast who's live streaming and talking about this, let's talk about the ridings that we are watching that are going to be coming in here. And like I said, we are not going to be describing that, hey, in Gatineau, with one poll reporting, the Green Party of Canada is out to a resounding lead of 54 votes, and the Liberals only have one. We're not going to do that.
Yeah, that just drives me crazy. That drives me crazy. Can we start talking about the riding of Beauce in Quebec, which is Maxime Bernier's riding?
Because I think it is that for a second. So I'm just going to show the list of candidates. We're going to talk about them right now. So right now, the incumbent for Beauce is Richard Lehoux. He beat Mr. Maxime Bernier back in 2019. Maxime Bernier is running for the People's Party of Canada. There is a lot of candidates in this election. There is the Free Party of Canada, which I still don't know what they are. There's the Marijuana Party, for those who don't know. Sebastian Tango is the Marijuana Party, so that is the logo that you are seeing beside Sebastian's name. Green Party's running Francis Jacques Cote for the NDP, so on and so forth. So this is a riding that Jen wants to talk about. There's the list. Go for it, Jen. What do you want to talk about, Beauce?
Well, I think Richard for the Conservative Party was a really big get for them. He had a lot of leadership experience. He was very well known. It was very strategic. on the part of the Scheer campaign in the last election of 2019 to kind of pull off this upset. And they were very successful in doing so. I just find it very interesting about watching this business of Maxime Bernier because, you know, people stay close to their home ridings on election night. It's important to note that Maxime Bernier is in Saskatoon. And if you see this setup in Saskatoon, I don't know, like it looks like an outdoor concert is going to happen. They've said we're prepared to be inside the ballroom, but if enough people show up, we're going to be outside in this field. I think that is an episode to watch, but it is really interesting to watch that he is running in a riding in Quebec and he is not there tonight. And I think that that's really revealing around how he's reading the tea leaves and what does happen to this party if there is considerable gains and yet the leader continues not to maintain a seat. Like what happens there? And when I was looking at all of the candidates that they've put up for this election, you know, they really have candidates all over the spectrum for themselves. But I was really watching in this election to see if like a number 2 emerged, like a person from Alberta or a person from Saskatchewan or someone that would be like, listen, if Bernier can't pull this off, is there some seat that's promising? And then they become the leader of that party. And I didn't see that materialize. And I think I can't figure out if the PPC is the PPC or if the PPC is Maxime Bernier.
I think it's the
That's
latter.
What I can't quite figure
think the
out.
People's Party of Canada is I think the People's Party of Canada is like the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party will pull above 30% in this election. I guarantee it right now. The Liberal Party is not the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party has left the Liberal Party of what I knew the Liberal Party to be, of the John Chrétien, the Paul Martin, the fiscal conservative Liberal Party.
The Michael Ignatieff, yeah.
We don't talk about that name in this household. Okay, we don't talk about him like you guys don't talk about Preston Manning. Okay.
Oh, we talk about Preston Manning.
Stockwell Day.
Oh yeah, no, we don't talk about that guy.
Yeah.
Doris Day? No, we don't talk about that guy.
Justin Trudeau is Warren Kinsella, and God bless him. He's a Calgarian. He's living in Prince Edward Hastings in a nice riding. I know the area quite well. He said it best. The Liberal Party has become a cult of the Trudeaus, and I say that reluctantly because I hate to use the word cult, but the Liberals have become a cult of the Trudeau name, and I hope that if Trudeau does leave, he goes away like Michael Ignatieff and goes to another country like Geneva. I know Geneva. So
Geneva's a nice place. Don't shove him there.
Hey, he's there right now.
So back to Faust. I think this. You know, I really do think, you know, Richard will hold this riding, and then the fate becomes like, what does happen to Maxime Bernier now? Like what is?
I think he stays on. I mean, I honestly think he does stay.
Oh yeah, when you're the curator of the party, that's the way it's going to be. But then what? Like then where does he go? Like he can't continue. He can't continue this. I'm going to run in Baus because I'm from there. No way. Think so?
He is laying the groundwork to run in Alberta. Run
in Alberta or run in Saskatchewan?
Either or. I think the only reason he's in Saskatchewan is because Saskatchewan has laxer rules around COVID-19 than Alberta right now. And that's why he's not in Quebec. He wants, like, the best thing that can come out for the People's Party of Canada tonight is if they pull in that 10 to 15%. I know you think it's a long shot. It might be. But even if they crack that conservative wall in the Western Canada with 10 or 15%, that's huge.
So for those of us keeping track here, at 7:47 p.m. Mountain Time, and according to the interactives, we've got the Liberals down to 0 in terms of losses and gains, so they're back at neutral. Conservatives holding through with 2 seats, a 2-seat gain and a 2-seat loss for the Bloc Québécois. That's where we are.
Yeah, and I want to go back to Coast of Bay, Central Notre Dame, because this is a riding that is close to my heart. I hope Scott Sims wins this riding. He has shrunk his deficit from over 1,400 votes to just over 700 votes, so he is getting closer, but there's only 4 polls outstanding. Scott Sims is going down in defeat tonight unless, and this is the unknown, I don't know how many mail-in ballots have been asked for in Coast of Bay, Central Notre Dame.
And do you know if like Elections Canada will be releasing that information? Like, this is how many mail-in ballots?
Oh, they have. I just didn't pull it up beforehand. When we take our first break in about 15 minutes, I'll look that up and then we'll talk about it. So I'm just looking at the other ridings. So the NDP are still shut out of Atlantic Canada, which is not shocking at all. St. John's East, which is an NDP was a NDP win in 2019, is relatively well in the Liberal column now. But we are looking at it. So this is going to be a fun night. I'm looking forward to it. As you can tell, that Jen and I are both probably on the CBC app right now, going through all the ridings and trying to figure this out. But I want to talk about the Alberta ridings right now that we're going to be watching. And for those who are watching on the screen, we are going to be watching. Oh, I'll start with the first one, is Banff Airdrie. Banff Airdrie is Blake Richards' riding. It is also the riding of former Conservative leadership candidate and no affiliation candidate, because that's the party he's literally labeled on Elections Canada. Derek Sloan is running in this riding. He dropped out of Hastings, Lanark, Frontenac, or Addington, and has moved himself all the way to Banff Airdrie. So this is a riding I will be watching because I want to see where Tariq El-Ghana, the Maverick Party candidate, does as well, because he has been polling well and he has been a star on social media. Next, I will be talking about Calgary Center. This is another riding we'll be watching. Unlike Mrs. Person who just voted for these people, Sabrina Grover, not Glover, Grover for the Liberal Party.
Doesn't matter. Not elected. Not elected tonight. Doesn't matter.
Juan Estevez Moreno for the NDP, Austin Mullins, and David Palawaski for the Conservative, for the Canadian Heritage Party. I do want to take a moment and say this for my listeners. David, the candidate for the Christian Heritage Party, literally filed his Ward 11 nomination papers 2 days before, on Friday, before this election. So he is now running for the Ward 11 candidate in the Calgary municipal elections. There's your fun tidbit for the day. Back to the ridings. Calgary Confederation, Len Weber, Murray Sigler, former Calgary Sports CEO, Calgary Chamber of Commerce CEO, interim president of the Calgary Chamber. Natalie Odd, who is the Green Party candidate, had the best showing of any Green Party of Canada candidate in Alberta last election with 8%. If her vote goes down, the Annemie Paul needs to go. The internal rift that has been caused because of Annemie Paul and the board of directors, or however they want to call themselves, they need to go. So I'm watching this riding for that reason alone, to see where the Green Party vote goes and if how bad it goes down. My riding, Calgary Skyview, George DeHall, incumbent Ward 5 councillor, Jag Sahota, incumbent MP, also critic for women and gender diversity affairs, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Gurinder Singh Gill is the NDP candidate. He has been going after George DeHall hard in the last few days, accusing him of not telling the truth when it comes to the
his holdings,
his holdings. Yeah. Yes, that's right. The Elections Canada office is in a building that George DeHall actually owns. So
yeah. So the rules are that candidates can't go within, was it 500 yards of like an election office to maintain some integrity between the candidate's business and the electioneering's office. And then it was revealed at a I think it was a radio debate,
Red FM,
online debate,
Red FM.
Yeah, that he had said, how is it possible that the Elections Canada built office is within a building that you own. And then, of course, compounding that, it came out that he has a secondary suite in a home that was recently shut down because it was deemed not to be appropriate. And so it was this whole idea of like, you're up to nefarious business dealings. How will you possibly represent this riding with integrity? I
Yes.
do absolutely think Calgary Skyview is one to watch. I think that Liberals are thinking, is this a place that we can crack this based on the popularity of a municipal candidate and the fact that people are frustrated with the Conservative candidate. And I think it's also important to note that like you and I we don't just drink the Kool-Aid, we also mix it and manufacture it and sell it. Like we are political Kool-Aid pushers, but there's a lot of people who like really, pride themselves on being politically engaged, but said to me like, oh, and then like, do I vote for my MP and then I also vote for my mayor? And it's like, oh, no. Those are two separate elections. You're going to have to go back to the polls in a month, or I guess 28 days to vote for that, to vote for your mayoral candidate. Or a lot of people saying like, you know what, I'm just really done with Kenny. I got to vote for a different party, and having to remind them that that's a provincial infrastructure and they're voting for a federal infrastructure. So we can't also forget people that despite themselves are going to go and be totally confused by the ballot and are just going to try to vote as best they can and not really realizing the change that they're advocating for. So not that I'm pointing out Calgary Skyview that they don't know what they're doing, but I'm just saying that in a lot of ridings, there's been some confusion, especially in Calgary, around like, what am I really voting for today? And I do think that, I'm watching Calgary Skyview for the sheer politicking that's taken place. It's been real nasty in that riding.
Oh, it has. And so for those who watch my Twitter feed, you know that I have done a massive tour of this city in the last 3 days. I will say this: the amount of yard signs on people's property is dismal for the Conservatives in this election. I was in Calgary Heritage, Stephen Harper's old riding. You could barely find one or two election signs in the area that I was in for the Conservative candidate. Yet again, there weren't for the Liberals. There weren't for the NDP. But what does that say from a conservative like me podcast host, that the Conservative movement, that it was so in tune to elections called, I'm going to the campaign office, I'm picking up my sign, I'm putting in my property, I'm done, I know where I'm voting. Where is that Conservative vote? Is it the Jason Kenney that has pissed people off? Is it the Aaron O'Toole? Is it the People's Party? Because if Conservatives are afraid to be identified as Conservatives in Calgary Heritage, what does that say about Conservatives in 2021?
Well, I do think that there's a couple of factors here that matter. First of all, I do think we have message exhaustion. You have to remember, in the city of Calgary, we've had a lot of issues with signage because mayoral signage, got into that loophole, thanks to Jody Gondek's campaign. And so a lot of people were really wary about signs. I do think that there's a little bit of a push where people from an environmentalism perspective are like, I don't want to put out a non-recyclable sign. So I think so those are your two fringe parts of it. And then I think the bigger piece is, yes, Jason Kenney is a problem. I think people are it's never been more difficult to self-identify as a Conservative. I mean, if anybody wants to get into the inside of my Twitter feed, it's really mean. People want to do things to my body that I'm like, yeah, my body doesn't do that kind of thing. And you wouldn't want it to. But it's the sheer nature. It doesn't matter if I'm educated or articulate or that I'm an advocate for a strong two-party system. It's the sheer concept that I would be a Conservative that makes me not eligible to participate in discourse. So I think a lot of people worry about vandalism in their home. And they're basically just saying, you know what, I'm fine to just go vote on voting day. I know people are going to vote alongside me. And I do think we're going to see this manifest itself in the mayoral campaign with Jeremy Farkas. I think Jeremy Farkas is far more popular in the city of Calgary, and has far more electoral power than people are willing to admit, because we're just not seeing the signage represented, because people are like, listen, I don't want the fight, but I'm gonna exercise my vote. So I think it's the 2016
Kenny. Trump vote, right? It's the 2016
absolutely.
Trump. We don't want to be identified, but we will vote for you.
But we will.
Just to interrupt.
You're absolutely right.
It is close to the top of the hour, and according to CBC votes, which we will be changing from time to time to see what other ones, the Liberals are leading. They have gained a potential 4 seats, leading and elected. The Conservatives have lost ground in 3 seats. The New Democrats have gained 3, and the Bloc have lost 4. Right now, leading and elected at 758. 66 Liberals are leading and elected. Conservatives are 34 leading and elected. New Democrats 10 leading and elected. Bloc Québécois 7 leading and elected. And in Gatineau, that one lonely Green is leading and elected. Okay, so we're seeing some numbers
leading but not elected.
What is your area in my mother just texted me and asked me what is the area in my election. Watch the podcast. Watch the podcast, mother, and you'll find out.
Yeah, Mom.
If these numbers hold up, while Atlantic Canada was good, I know these are still early results. What happened in Atlantic Canada might have been just a blip for the Conservatives.
I don't know. I'm a few things of note here. As of right now, the People's Party is outperforming the Greens. They're at 4.5% of the vote. That's 37,000 Canadians that have placed their vote in the PPC. Greens with 3% of the vote, or 25,000 Canadians. We are seeing the Liberals pull away. We expected to see them pull away. They have strong performance in Ontario, so this is not where the runaway begins. Where I think we should place some surprise is in what's happening with the Bloc. What is happening with the Bloc out of loss of 4 seats now? Chris, can you tell us where those votes have been reappropriated?
I right now they all seem to be going to the NDP. So in Berthe Mascaconia, Ruth Ellen Barassa, who is the former well-liked NDP MP, is well out in advance with a whopping 6 votes to 4 votes. This is a riding that I'll be watching. Yet again, we're getting into that one polls and all that. Up in the north, Romeo, I forget how to pronounce his last name, ran for the leadership of the NDP. Northern Quebec MP, Atiba Bay James Nunavik EU. The NDP are polling well in that area as well. So yet again, these numbers are still well early. We are still only 8 o'clock. Polls have been closed for a half hour, and these are the numbers that are coming in. We have lots of time to make up.
And we've got lots of Conservatives in the West.
Yeah. So I can report on this one because there's more than one poll that's been called. Edmonton Center, Randy Boissonnault is out to a lead of about 40 votes with 4 votes polling. That's Edmonton Center. And then down in...
And he is the candidate for which party? Just to
Liberals. And then down in Calgary Skyview with 1 poll reporting, George DeHall, the Liberal candidate, is out to a 3-1 lead. 3 for the Liberals, 1 for the independent Lee Awkward. So I'm assuming Lee Awkward voted for themselves in the advance.
See, this is the business of the one poll. Like, you just really never know what you're dealing with there. Brasso, am I saying it right?
Yeah.
The NDP candidate. There was a question that was asked today. If you could see one person not from your own party be reelected into their riding, who would you pick? And I chose John Aldag from Cloverdale Langley City to return into the Liberal seat and to take it away from Conservative Tamara Jansen in that riding, who her and I have a lot of beef. And but Brasso was the resounding choice. All over from a lot of people who said, she's not my candidate, but God, it feels good to see her as an MP.
And for those who don't remember, just a little bit of a history lesson for you, for the viewers and to the listeners. Ruth Ellen was elected in 2011 in the NDP Orange Crush of Quebec. For those who really don't remember, and this is the political geek in me and who can remember this, but can't remember his own goddamn freaking cell phone number. Ruth Ellen Barroso was in Vegas for 2 weeks of the campaign. She had actually left the country because she had scheduled a campaign already. She did not live in the riding, but she was well liked. She won in 2011. I think she was reelected in 2015 and then defeated in 2019. Singh has been wanting to get her back into the benches since 2019. She was playing coy, and then a week into the election, she tweeted out, "Big news coming," and then she announced that she was running for re-election. So this is a riding that I will be watching because she is well liked, and if the NDP do well there, they might have a good night in Quebec, but let's be honest, right now it doesn't look like that's probably going to be the case. So there's my tidbit for the day.
That's great. That's
Welcome
great.
to Chris
I feel like
Brown's
it should have been. I feel like it should have been a heritage moment. Like there should have been intro music. Like we should have paused and.
So it is 8:02, and yet again, I'm not going to keep on doing this throughout the night, but 82 leading and elected Liberals, 40 for the Conservatives, 14 for the Bloc and the NDP, and 1 for the Green. This is still early results, and we are still only a half hour into this. I'm going to say this because I just ran out of water, and I'm realizing I have very bad dry mouth right now. We will be back in about 15 minutes. We'll be actually in about 10 minutes. We'll be back at 8:15. I'm going to update some graphics, make sure that we have everything that we need. Okay. We have someone who just tweeted at us, watch our podcast, watch our live stream. So thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. But we will be back at 8:15. With some more results, some more in-depth analysis, and then some better graphics because I will have updated graphics by then. Jen, thank you so much for everyone. We'll be back in a few minutes. I just want to make sure I do this correctly now. Hey everyone, we're back. Sorry we took a little bit longer. We were just getting everything ready. I just want to give a quick update since we've left. And this was about 2 seconds ago, and I just looked down, and now this all changed. But the graphics, because I'm doing this by myself, we are Liberals leading and elected 101, Conservatives 51 leading and elected in the NDP column. There's 19, and the Bloc Québécois are leading and elected in 15. I want to bring back the best person this show has ever invited onto the show. Actually, that's untrue because I can't say that because everyone's going to say that. But Jen Sanford, thank you so much for doing this once again.
Yeah, great to be here, Chris. So just to put those numbers into like a real tangible place, that is a Liberal gain of 10 seats, Conservative loss of 10 seats. So flips there. Bloc Québécois have lost 3 seats from the last election and a gain to the New Democrats of 3 seats. So obviously not the outcome that Conservatives were looking for. They're going to have to pull off kind of a miracle here. This is a Mighty Ducks election board now.
So the biggest, there's 2 big news stories out of these initial numbers. One is the NDP. The NDP are performing an hour and 18 minutes into this election, counting, better than I think a lot of people predicted. They're at about 16% of the share of the vote of the ballots that have been cast and counted so far. The other biggest news story that I'm looking at right now, and I still can't believe this, is the Green Party of Canada at 2.8%. If that number holds, Annamie Paul's done.
Annamie Paul's done anyway, Chris, but you have to appreciate that, like, just like run the tail of the tape of the numbers backward. There's 35 million Canadians. We'll say that, on a good day, where 40% of us will vote. We're seeing, 2.8% of that public. That's 30,000 Canadians voting. Just to put that in perspective, that's like 1/2 of 1 quadrant of Edmonton.
Yeah.
Right. That's 2 really big subdivisions in Edmonton. And that feels really interesting to me because such an important election issue was the environment. Right. We talked about, we now have 2 political parties that focused a lot on carbon taxation. Not a lot of them focused on greenhouse gas emissions. Both parties have been accused of one not setting benchmarks, the other one of setting benchmarks too low. There was really an inviting environment, a warm, succulent environment for someone to say, this is how I believe that we can counterbalance economic growth and environmental stability, and really a compelling case for us as a civic society. And those 3 things can intermix with this plan. And that plan just was simply not sold to Canadians.
I agree. If the Greens had a chance of winning a few more seats, this was the election. And your spirit animal, Miss Jenny Bird, said it best as well. This is the election that Trudeau should lose. This was the election that, out of any election that he's run beforehand, 2019, 2015, this was the one for him to lose. If these numbers hold, and yet again, this is still early days, and I just want to go back to the numbers, 41% of the ballots cast or counted right now for the Liberals, 31 for the Conservatives. That number is going to shrink. But if these numbers hold, Aaron O'Toole is a one-term, one-election leader. I don't care how you have to spin that, but...
Yeah, so to be really concrete with those numbers, because if people are listening to us and they're not following along with the math, you need 170 seats to become a majority government. So that's the ticket to ride. 170, and the government is yours, and passing bills becomes a very fun experience for you, and you get to be a majority, and then you get to ride out 4 fun years. So 170 is the magic number. If we count the amount of seats that have been called and the amount of seats that they're leading, this is the tail of the tape. Liberals at 130. So you need 170, and they're elected or leading in 130. O'Toole at 65. Bloc Québécois at 25. New Democrats at 17. This is not just a problem for the Conservatives, which let's be clear, it is a problem. This is not where they wanted to be tonight. If Aaron O'Toole is watching the CBC, he's not happy. But it's also a really a really bad showing for the Bloc Québécois. And it is a good showing for Jagmeet Singh, who I think both Chris and I thought would maybe be running his last election as the leader of the NDP. I didn't have a lot of faith in him. Now, as a conservative, I'm very far ideologically from the New Democrats, but you have to give credit where credit is due. And there is a pretty good performance from Jagmeet Singh. I mean, he's leading in 17 ridings. He has not been acclaimed as the elected winner of any, but he is leading strongly in the 17 ridings with a lot of polls reporting. And where he's leading are in spaces that are taking away from the Bloc Québécois. And that's interesting that they're making some interesting inroads in Quebec, because they did lose a seat in Atlantic Canada where they held a seat that split, and there was lots of gains for conservatives there. So some good surprises on the map today, and a nice big good credit to demonstrate that, just like we saw in the United States, polling is not always a critical indicator of where Canadians are going to vote on voting day. Lots of surprises here, Chris. What do you think?
There is a lot of surprises, and the last one I want to talk about for a second before we turn to some riding by riding results here is that People's Party vote. I expected it to be in the high 10%, but right now we're roughly about 4.5%, which is about 4 times the amount that they got in the last election. This doesn't bode well for the conservative camp. If I am to believe that all the conservatives who are pissed off at Aaron O'Toole for some flip-flops went to the People's Party of Canada, it's not a good night for him for some of the rural areas. It's not going to flip a lot of seats, but it could mean 1 or 2 seats like Calgary Skyview could be a really good play for the Liberal Party. So that's the other area I want to talk about. I'm looking at this map as numbers come in, and I am shocked at where people are leading and where people are elected. And I don't know what to say here, because I was expecting it to be closer. Like you said, you can't believe polls anymore, can you?
Well, I've been talking about polling deficits for a long time. As someone who studied politics in the United States, I was part of that 2016 infrastructure when, a lot of people were talking about what Hillary Clinton was going to wear on Inauguration Day, and different data sets were saying you have to pay attention to the momentum of Donald Trump. Where I think we have to really be honest, and I think if reality therapy is an important element of that, then let's begin here. A lot of people don't feel comfortable to self-identify anymore with their political leanings, right? It's a bit of a repeat of what we're experiencing in our vaccine environment, right? Someone saying like, "Oh, I've made the decision not to be vaccinated." Or in some rural areas.
I got my first dose.
Congratulations. Or in some very rural areas, people being a little bit afraid to identify that they have been vaccinated because there's an anti-vaccination sort of sentiment in their community. So I think people affirm a sense of conformity, and if I can throw out a communication theory, social proof theory would teach us that sometimes we don't always feel comfortable to self-identify and be completely transparent in how we choose to vote, either by not participating in polling or not being transparent in polling, or by allowing polling samples that are both inconsistent in their validity and representation to become mainstream news. I think that's the other thing we have to look at. If you see a polling sample of 45 people, it's not statistically reliable.
No, and even if you see a polling sample of about 700 people, you have to look at the margin of error, and always look at the margin of error. Correct. I want to take a moment right now and just talk about that 2019 election. I love graphs. I love talking about graphs, but at the beginning of this election, we'll actually, let's go back to 2019 here for a second. We're just going to pull up a graphic. In 2019, the party standing was 157 MPs for the Liberals, 121 for the Conservatives, 24 for the NDP, 32 for the Bloc, 3 MPs for the Green, and 1 MP for the Independent. At dissolution, at the time that Justin Trudeau walked to Mary Simon's house in Rideau Hall and asked the Governor General for dissolution of the Parliament, 155 Liberals, 119 Conservatives, 24 NDP, 32 Bloc, 2 Green, and 5 Independents. Now, those, I think 3 of them were Liberals, former Liberals who were kicked out. 1 was Derek Sloan and 1 was Jody Wilson-Raybould. This means the Liberals need to pick up 15 seats to win that coveted 170. The Conservatives need 51 seats. The NDP need 146. And the Greens need 168 seats to win. Doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime.
Just 168 seats.
I am being generous to them. We have seen weirder things happen, aka the 2015 Alberta election. With that, I want to also take a moment and talk about that vote. The vote total. Over 6,018,728 votes went to the Liberals at 32.12%. The Conservatives did get a larger share of the vote in 2019. Mm-hmm. They got 239,227 at 34.34% of the vote. Looking at these numbers that you and I are both watching, I know there was some talk that this could be a repeat of 2019 and the Conservatives could potentially win some seats and have a bigger share than they did last time, but still lose government. I'm going to break it here right now. CBC is calling the Liberals will form government. The Liberals will win re-election and form government. Looking at the numbers that they're looking at, 134 seats leading an elected. CBC, yet again, I'm not CBC, but I trust them as the news sources, and Jen is looking at some polls numbers. Justin Trudeau is going back to 24 Sussex Cottage because he doesn't live in 24 Sussex. Jen?
Because it's not pretty enough.
What the hell happened? Let's get your reaction right here, right now. Wow.
Oh, I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed that this is what happened. I liked Aaron O'Toole's campaign, and I think that he fought a really hard campaign. I liked that he had policy ideas. I'm frustrated that he continues to trip over the nature of who controls the Conservative Party. And I hope that they have a hot wash where heads roll, because I liked this team. I liked how he put this together. I like how he presented himself to be a man of dignity. And I just, I wish I could find a partner that loves me the way Canadians love Justin Trudeau. It's this unconditional.
No. Let's. I'm gonna challenge you on that. It's not Canadians who love Justin Trudeau. It's Liberals who love Justin Trudeau.
But, ultimately, it's Canadians that went out and voted, right? So it's, people giving them their vote. I think that this does demonstrate that, Canadians are in an unconscious battle between political ideas and how we spend $100 billion. There were a lot of people who stood to gain financially from Justin Trudeau's policies, and he used those groups to buy their vote, and that will be something that, will frustrate Conservatives for a long time. So there it is. There's the narrative, right? It didn't matter what Maxime Bernier did. It didn't matter what the Maverick Party did. It just mattered that you were fighting Justin Trudeau and you couldn't knock him out. You couldn't beat him. And that's frustrating because, like I said, I just sound like a broken record. I liked the campaign that Aaron O'Toole ran. I thought it was a campaign of dignity. I think that those two had a responsibility to debate each other harder without the ridiculous noise of fringe parties and whatever that was from Yves-François Blanchet in the English debate. But I think,
does Aaron O'Toole have to step down?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually shocked. I am shocked that it took 2 hours into this election to be able to call that.
Well, I did say whatever it was going to be called early. I did actually make a joke that we'd be talking about my dating life. I don't want to talk about my dating life for the record.
Hour 4, we're not even in hour 2 yet.
Yeah, I
I,
This is
I
terrible because it's live and I feel like I'm grappling for the right thing to say.
Well, Calgary Mindapore. I'm not sure if anyone noticed the sign change behind me. Stephanie Cussy has been declared elected in Calgary Mindapore. Gurmeet
No
Banshu.
surprises there.
No, which is, for those who are watching and listening, our fearless premier's old riding, Jason Kenney. So she is going back to Ottawa. She is probably not happy that it's a Liberal government, but it is going back. Calgary Skyview, we're still waiting on numbers there. It's going to be a long night there. Edmonton Center, Randy Bossino is still leading for the Liberals. I just want to make sure that I keep on saying Stephanie Cussy is hopefully I'm pronouncing her name right. If I'm not, I do apologize. There is a riding that I want to talk about for a second in Saskatchewan, Saskatoon West. For those who don't know, Aaron Weir was the former NDP MP for Saskatoon West. He was accused of sexual harassment while as an MP. He was kicked out. He became an independent CCF, and now the NDP are looking to take that back by Robert Duchette. Robert Duchette is currently leading for the NDP in Saskatoon West over Brad Redekop, the Conservative incumbent, by 120 votes. That is still early. There's only 3 polls reporting, but this is a riding that we are going to want to watch. I can say that the People's Party is not a factor in that riding at all. So that just took the wind out of my sail by being able to call an election 2 hours into this, but yeah. So we are 8:33 Mountain Standard Time. Justin Trudeau is heading back with a reduced minority, probably. Jen, I'm going to throw it back to you for a second because I'm still looking at some of these numbers, and the 905, the 4016 is still a Liberal stronghold.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Aaron O'Toole and the Conservatives can't win the 416 and the 905, what do the Conservatives need to do to win suburban Ontario?
It's environment, it's childcare, and on both of those issues, they were not strong enough in being able to key message it out. Right? A lot of people said on childcare, $10 a day is an easy policy to understand. $10 a day is $10 a day. The Conservative childcare plan had a lot of creative solutions to deal with parents that didn't have that standard 9 to 5 schedule, and they couldn't get on those talking points. Instead, it was just like, well, it's still a tax subsidy. And then people, they do the math and they just think this policy is too complicated. I don't want to do math. I just want $10 a day. And on the environment, I like elements of the Conservative environmental plan. As you know, as someone who comes from the environmental space, I didn't think it went far enough to actually address elements of innovation, a pathway through the marketplace, an opportunity to actually address carbon reduction, use natural green infrastructure to build disaster resiliency, looking at, how, storm surges, affects, our areas, subsidence. All of those messages would have resonated, but instead it was just like, oh, you want a carbon tax now too? Well, then I'm going to stick with the Liberals because at least it's the devil that I know. And then when you can't get your party to get that environmental plan down to 1, 2, 3 key messages, it becomes a miserable experience at the door.
I agree.
So much of this is messaging. Sorry, Chris. Much of this is messaging.
I agree wholeheartedly. The Conservatives were heading to a minority government. And then they tripped over the gun messaging. Do you think that resonated with voters when Aaron O'Toole flip-flopped on the gun messaging as well?
Yeah, it's not about flip-flopping. It's about a lack of a common ad, because Conservatives really championed, you even saw it today on election day, this whole idea that we go forward, they go backward. And I've talked about this line of logic on my podcast ad nauseum. It's available for your information and digest. But the problem is that the way you combat that is to say it's not technically correct policy. We have a problem with how handguns get into major metropolitan areas. We're going to address handguns. We have a problem with purchasing loopholes. We're going to close those loopholes. We have a problem with how we prosecute people who illegally sell guns. We're going to be disciplined to get that. This is technically correct policy. Going after people's hunting rifles isn't technically correct policy. Going after handguns that are stolen and shoot people in metropolitan areas in gang violence is exactly the type of policy that we need to go after. Ours yields a change, but instead it's just they get crowded with this whole like, I want to support the gun lobby, and I know that rural people have hunting, and they go, and they sport hunting, and I can't be seen as you did not need to get bogged down in your own message. You needed to talk about what is the greatest threat to gun violence. It's this, this, and this. And our policy addresses this, this, and this. And don't fall for a narrative otherwise. End of story. That's gun violence. It's the same thing on this vaccine thing. Why couldn't he step into the message in a meaningful way to say, listen, I want everyone to be vaccinated. I want everyone to be vaccinated. And when someone tells me they're not vaccinated, my only question that I ask them is, what will it take to get you vaccinated? But it's important to note that we are a country where people have freedoms, and forcing people to be vaccinated isn't what is quintessentially Canadian. Creating a program where we have information and persuasion and opportunity and a place for them to own their self-efficacy to say, oh my God, I need to be vaccinated if I'm going to be a participant in society and I'm going to be someone who's working toward a common goal. That's the kind of leader I want. That's what we call adaptive leadership, right? And I think that's what the frustration was, is that why couldn't he say that message? Instead, he's like, oh, I don't want to disclose who is, I want to respect privacy. Then you're just dogged by that all the time. What you have to say is that I want to be a prime minister where people trust the information coming out of the prime minister's office. We have experts that speak in a credible manner. We don't have this AstraZeneca bullshit that creates disinformation. We fight disinformation from people who are spelling rumors that are not true. And my goal is not to force you to be vaccinated because that's anti-Canadian. My job is to persuade you to be vaccinated because that's what's in our collective good best interest. And that is leadership. And every other argument is unacceptable to me, full stop. So that's what I'm talking about. Is it, where's the fight? Where's the bite back? Where's the, hey, Justin, are the two Michaels going to be home for Christmas? Tell me why. Oh, no, I'm getting mad. Are the two Michaels going to be home for Christmas? And also tell me why Australia, the UK, and the US are coming up with a China strategy and your phone didn't even ring. Well, tell me why we participate in the G7, and if it went down to G6, we're out. Those are the questions that should have been demanded, and they weren't.
Well, that plus we have France now recalling their ambassador to Australia and the United States because France was pissed off that they didn't get the submarines as well. It's going to be a fun... I think actually, let's talk about that. Let's do a little pitch here. So for those who are a regular listener of my show, you will know that Jennifer Sanford and I like to talk politics. Starting October 27th, the last Wednesday of each month moving forward, we are going to be talking about one issue, and that is literally going to be crossing borders. And that is what, Jen? What are we going to be talking about on the Cross Border Interview podcast?
Well, we're going to be going, if this is the cross-border podcast, then we have to start going across all borders. So I think that while we've talked about municipal politics, we've talked about federal politics, we've talked about provincial politics, what we've never really talked about is international politics. And we are at an incredibly precarious moment where Canada has to figure out what its brand international looks like. So what does Canada's approach to Afghanistan look like? What does Canada's approach in the United Nations look like? Those are the things that we need to unpack if we're going to do this sort of across all borders thing. And that's the conversation that we're going to be having. And I'm really actually quite excited to broaden the scope of our political, I don't know, what do we call it?
I honestly thought you were going to say for a second, I'm really looking forward to broadening your listeners' viewpoints, because as the former liberal, you got to broaden the liberal viewpoint. I'm just looking at some of the ridings here as they come in. Yet again, no major metropolitan area in Alberta has been called yet. Edmonton Griesbach, a riding that the NDP are looking to pick up, are leading well ahead of Kerry Diot, the Conservative incumbent. This is a riding that Jagmeet Singh has basically camped out in a few times when he's been in Edmonton. So if Blake Desjarlais wins this riding, it's going to be a big win for the NDP in Alberta, because this is now sending, probably Edmonton Strathcona is going to be another riding that the NDP keep in their column. But if they can crack that blue wall that is Edmonton's stranglehold federally, then Jason Kennedy needs to have a hard conversation with himself as well. And just looking around at some of the other ridings, Edmonton Strathcona is currently in the Conservative column. Calgary Nose Hill, Miss Michelle Rempel Gardner. Miss Conservative Health Critic has been elected to another term in office. She is probably one that I would watch for in a leadership race if she decides to throw her hat in the ring. Is there any ridings that you're looking at right now that you're shocked at? Oh, I should mention this because this was a riding that you wanted to talk about. Is Peterborough Kawartha, Minister of Women, Miss Mariam Monsef, is currently trailing the Conservative candidate in that riding, not by a lot, but she is trailing in that riding. It looks like, and I'm saying this in all respect, it looks like we are heading to a very urban-rural divide in Canadian politics, people.
Yeah, we sure are.
Conservatives are going to do well, and if that's the case, get ready for a long period of Liberal minority governments.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see more polling. We still have to see what's going to happen. I really, really want to see what's going to happen in the lower mainland of BC. I hope you'll hang with us as we do this. But let's do the comparison to 2019 to 2021 today. So if we're looking at the numbers, which are still moving, and let's be clear that they are still moving. In 2019, let me just get my notes organized here. In 2019, Liberals had 157. 2021, we're at 145. So again, not everything has been reported. Not everything is in. We still have BC, but this is a very strong performance. 157 was what they formed government with in 2019. We're at 145 now. Conservatives, 121 to 118. And that is a striking thought to me, because if you compare Andrew Scheer and how much even Conservatives were like, I can't believe I have to go vote for this guy. And then
I have to go vote for the American over blackface. Wow.
Yeah. And then you see Aaron O'Toole, who really ran a quite a different campaign around political ideas and policies that tried to be really responsive and technically correct and politically supportable and have public salience and were scalable across the country. I think that's the other piece. So 121 to 117. And then the Bloc, 32 in the last election to 29 today. So we have to wonder how much the endorsement from François Legault for Aaron O'Toole played a role in harming that party a little bit, because they're not going to be happy with that. I remember early interviews this morning saying 30 is the expected number. So to see them fall a little bit short of that at 29 will be disheartening for the Bloc. NDP, 24 in the last election, leading in 27 today. So that's got to be a bit of a feather in the cap of Jagmeet Singh. I think he'll be pleased with that performance, especially where the pickup occurred. And I think that will, renew his dynamic force that he will bring to the House of Commons. He's going to be a player now. Jagmeet Singh has the enviable position to prop up the government. I mean, I say this after every election. If you listen to my podcast,
I apologize to interrupt. We don't know if he's going to prop up the government, because As we're talking, we are 19 seats short of a majority government for the Liberals. Yet again, this
That
is leading an
is
election.
true.
This could still come down to, this now becomes a game of, can Aaron O'Toole do worse in areas where Andrew Scheer did good in Lower Mainland BC? And if that's the case, we are headed to a majority government, and we have Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister of Canada for the next 3 years.
4 years.
I say
that's right. Even as
I say 3 years because he does not want 4 years. He will bow out before the next election.
Yeah, I think so. I do think that this is the last election of Trudeau. Yeah, even just as we were talking, we went from 145 to 151, which is always the danger of these types of podcasts. But, if the NDP does wind up propping them up, you have to imagine like what an enviable position that is. That is such a small fraction of votes that carries such a critical balance of power. Like that is the really phenomenal thing about the federal NDP party. Greens in 2019 at 3, at 2 today, and that's just leading, not elected. And then of course
it just changed to 3.
Oh, look at that!
Look at that! But I want to take a moment here because you kept on harking at me that this was not an issue. I want to go back to 2019's vote total. The People's Party of Canada had 294,000 votes. That was 1.6% of the share. As of this moment, as of 8:47, the People's Party of Canada, with only 19% of the polls across Canada reporting, is at 112,000 votes.
114.
This, I am sorry. I know there's probably a portion of that is the Liberals and the NDP, but that is Aaron O'Toole right there. That is moderate conservatism right there, if you ask me.
That went to the PPC party.
Moderate
conservatism.
Moderate conservative leaders make social conservatives pissed off. And that number would have been lower if Andrew Scheer was still leader.
Okay. I don't share that point of view. I don't share that point of view. Once again, I think these are just outlier voters, people who have been apathetic. I do think it's some conservatives that have reimagined, but I think it's a lot of, apathetic voters, first-time voters, people who have reemerged from somewhere because there's but there is a small percentage of this that is a rebuke of Aaron O'Toole. But when you see how far behind he is, that really he didn't lose a fight because Maxime Bernier stole it from him. He lost a fight because he didn't mount enough of a campaign against Justin Trudeau.
Well, I'm assuming you are on the Twitterverse, and I'm assuming our listeners are as well. And FYI, we're going to be bringing in someone here at the top of the hour at 9:15. Former NDP MLA Deborah Drever is going to come on for about 15 minutes. She wants to come on and talk about the results, and I just want to get from a NDP perspective how she sees it. So I just want to make sure that I talk about that. Hold on. I literally talked for a second. My computer just froze.
Chris is in panic mode. You know what? This actually happened to me in 2019. I paused my computer and I went and made myself a sandwich, and it was a whole thing. And then when I got back and unpaused my computer and moved it to where we were, it was like, we declare a minority government for the Liberals. I was like, how long was I making that sandwich?
Did I lose something? Am I completely out of... Okay. I want to go back to this for a second.
So your screen is still on the vote totals, right?
Not anymore.
Is it just behind?
Yeah, there's about a 30-second delay here. I want to take a moment and I ask this, but thanks for following along. Greatly appreciate it.
Okay. I'm here to help, buddy.
I know you seem to be. While we are still waiting for the minority and majority government to be called, I think we are both looking at a minority government here, just looking at the numbers as they come in. Who's the winner of tonight? Is there a winner?
Justin Trudeau. But yeah, Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau, because he was like, you know what? We've asked people to sacrifice. We've asked people to stay home. We've asked people to, We've asked people to just do some pretty isolating things. We've taken a really hard toll on their mental health, but now I need something. And once again, I'm second to my own rules. So let's have a pandemic election. Seemingly Canadians were all pissed off about it. And then we reward him with a return back to his cottage.
Is there any scenario in which Aaron O'Toole stays on? If he does the exact same as Andrew Scheer, does he stay on, or are the knives out? Because this is where I was getting with my statement before my computer froze. You're on Twitter. You saw the news out of the Toronto Star today. I'm assuming that the co-chair of the Conservative Party of Canada, Aaron O'Toole's lieutenant, basically said a win for the Conservatives is holding Justin Trudeau to a minority government, which he later tried to walk back, but the reporter said, no, that's what you said.
So whatever.
Well,
everybody says something stupid on the day before an election, but I don't really care about his talking heads. What I care about is the fact that what other type of campaign could he mount? He mounted a campaign where it was policy driven. It was about political ideas. He really did give it everything he had. This was not a blistering, like everything went wrong, which I do think happened to the Liberals. I think they ran a terrible campaign. And so I think Aaron O'Toole gave it everything he had. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is what I want to be. This is what I want to do. This is the vision I hold for this country. These are my moral values. And if that didn't resonate with Canadians, absolutely not. And you also have to remember that what Conservatives do super well are two things. One, give a disproportionately loud voice to social conservatives, and two, eat their young. And that is what will happen tomorrow. Michelle Rempel-Gardner, Pierre Poilievre, Michael Chong, their campaigns start tomorrow.
Well, I'm pretty sure Pierre Poilievre started the day the election was called with every one of his video campaigns that he released, it was fighting for you. No mention of Aaron O'Toole, no mention of secure the future.
The brand was different. Yeah. The brand was different. The tone was different. He was totally an outlier candidate. He was the same kind of outlier candidate as I am employee. Like Jennifer's doing her own thing over there. Off brand, but on message.
I'm just looking at the riding results right now for Hastings, Lennox, and Addington, and that is the riding that Derek Sloan used to represent before he decided to move out to Banff Airdrie. His wife is currently the candidate there as well, running as an independent. She has 47 votes at 1%. Yet again, this is still only 30 out of 203 polls. But Shelby Cramp Newman is the Conservative candidate, and she is winning over Mike Bossio, the former MP who Derek Sloan beat in 2019. Just for some background information, Shelby Cramp is the daughter of the MLA or MPP in Ontario, Daryl Cramp, who used to be the former MP for Prince Edward Hastings, which is part of this riding. So Shelby Cramp Newman is going to take the Hastings Lennox Addington vote or seat probably for the Conservatives in that riding. The Liberals were hoping to pick that up, but it does not look like they're going to. Prince Edward Bay of Quinte, which is my old stomping ground as well. I've ran numerous campaigns in that area. Neil Ellis, former Belleville mayor, is currently the Liberal incumbent. He is being defeated by Ryan Williams, who is the son of the former mayor of Trenton, Ontario. So that is a very interesting election that I've been watching. He's the Conservative. It looks like Mr. Ellis is going to be a two-term MP. These are...
So remember how we were talking earlier about the percentage of votes that Greens have? This was about, 40 minutes ago. We talked about how they had 40,000 votes, and that was about the size of two very large communities in Alberta or BC. It's important to note that 40,000 vote margin is now the difference between the amount of votes for the Liberal Party and the amount of votes for the Conservatives. 40,000 is all that separates them. 1.5%, just to put that in more statistically relevant. 35% of Canadians who voted have cast their confidence in Justin Trudeau's government. 33.5% for Aaron O'Toole. So we can be pretty hard on the campaign that Aaron O'Toole ran, and believe me, Conservatives will be. But it's important to note that 1.5% divides our country at a time where we feel very divided.
And we wake up tomorrow morning. What's the first thing Jason Kenney has to do?
Jason Kenney?
Yep, because he is the reason why we're in this mess, I believe, because I think a lot of people from Ontario might have said, hey, what Justin Trudeau is saying is correct. I don't want Aaron O'Toole across the seat from Jason Kenney. But Jason Kenney implementing the mandatory vaccine passports, does Jason Kenney have to suck up to Justin Trudeau for the next 2 years, or does he continue on with his I hate Justin Trudeau campaign?
Oh no, it'll absolutely continue, because there's no incentive for the two to work together now. I mean, clearly nobody's fighting for Albertans. So what is their incentive to work together? They don't have a shared goal. They don't have a shared goal in the interest of the residents of Alberta, right? So no, absolutely not. First of all, it's not on brand for them to do that. And it's both ways, right? Justin Trudeau has no interest in being like, hey, how can I really extend an olive branch to Alberta? We've been a non-element, non-issue, non-factor for him since the beginning. Since the beginning. So yeah, if I'm Jason Kenney, I'm just going to do what Jason Kenney does. I'm going to tread water, and I'm going to try to govern unilaterally, and then I'm going to, try to fend off a leadership review that's incredibly eminent. I think the bigger question is, does
Jason Kenney jump to federal politics to get away from the shit show that is Alberta politics that is about to come his way?
Well, we've talked about this, that, there's quite a good consensus that the belief was always that he was going to run for premier, save Alberta, and then get on his white horse and ride all the way back to Sussex. But, that dream has died because he won't have the support of his own province. There's just too much political collateral. It's a wasteland now of just, a lack of political goodwill from voters to Jason Kenney. And that now has national profile, right? The bigger question I think that has to be asked, maybe I'll take this to my own podcast, is what does the next Conservative leader do with Jason Kenney? Right? Because you've got to kind of say, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? I do think Jason Kenney's poor management of the fourth wave of COVID-19 cost Conservatives dearly. Now, I still think all these ridings in Calgary and Edmonton and certainly rurally in Alberta are still going to go blue. And like you said, it doesn't matter how many people vote in a riding. You just have to have one more than the other party. But that's no longer an acceptable excuse, because what happens is when you have such a dismal national profile, it does bleed into other ridings. And then it does allow the line of questioning, or the question that you just used, which is other ridings saying, I don't know about this Aaron O'Toole, but I don't want a Doug Ford. I don't want a Jason Kenney. I don't want a Scott Moe or a Brad Wall. I don't want those people. I don't want a Tamara Jansen. I don't want, you know what I mean? Like, it just allows them to say, I don't want this. And then you get painted with that brand. You also have to remember that Conservatives still sit in the shadow of American conservatism, right? I think that it never gets enough time, that they passed crippling, abortion, restrictions in the United States right in the middle of this campaign. And that was brand conservative. And I think that ekes over. I mean, we consume such a large amount of American news, and it's coming at a time when so much American news is about Conservatives are committed to destroying this country. Don't let it happen elsewhere. And then, of course, we had the additional ridiculousness of Americans endorsing candidates.
I just want to jump in here for a second, because this is just breaking as well. Banff Airdrie, which is the home of Blake Richards, the Conservative MP, has just been declared the winner, ending Derek Sloan's time as an MP. He came out here trying to win an election, and I'm looking at the initial results right now with only about 10% of the polls reporting. Derek Sloan is polling underneath the Green Party of Canada.
Well, there you go. So there is good news from tonight for Conservatives, right? Because Conservatives don't want Derek Sloan's voice or perspective to be reflected when they think about what conservatism is in this country. So that's good news. That's a win.
So we're just going to talk about your favorite person as well here for a second. Tamara Jansen, God bless her. Cloverdale Langley, with, again, about 10% of the polls reporting. John Aldich is out in the lead with a very slim 28 vote lead over the Conservatives, the Liberal. There is no Green Party candidate in this election, in this riding. So that's where I'm looking at where that Green vote is going to go. But Cloverdale, Langley City, if the Liberals want a majority government, they need to win this seat, especially with the losses that they did in Atlantic Canada.
And as our listeners might remember, I am a staunch supporter of John Aldag. He may be a Liberal, but he has a conservative mind. I have someone who has sat across from him on more than one occasion and heard him speak. He has a conservative mind. And I think having him inside the Liberal caucus is a smart maneuver, because he is a bridge builder to say, this is out of step with the momentum of Canadians. He has no issue in terms of really representing that riding. And I think it is vital as Conservatives that we say Derek Sloan's vision and values are out of step with Canadians, and he cannot represent a Conservative banner. And then we replicate that in Cloverdale, Langley City by saying the same thing as Tamara Jansen. Her rebuke of conversion therapy, her unwillingness to look at progressive, especially progressive women's issues. She's so anti-abortion that it's absolutely terrifying. It's terrifying. She campaigns with Oh, go ahead.
For my listeners who might not know Tamara that well, I can give you two words that became famous with Tamara Jansen, and that is lesbian activities. During the conversion ban therapy, the conversion therapy ban, Tamara said that she knew a lesbian, and the lesbian wanted to get rid of her lesbian activities, so she went into conversion therapy. So
just ridiculous.
Exactly. So that is Tamara to a T. But
but I think it's also important to note that she's also very well backed by, anti-abortion group, that ARPA, which is like, God tells us who the candidate should be. She's been so harmful to the Conservative brand. And she's a great representation that we have to be mindful that, the Conservatives need to establish a policy book and say, these are the priorities of the policy book. These are the types of private members' bills that we will accept that fall under this policy book. If you have your own private vendetta, you have to leave it out of the political space, because you're there to serve the constituents. You're not there to serve your own interests. We do not talk about this enough in politics, especially in the Conservative tent. And that's when it goes from being a political tent to a circus tent, is that we find these candidates who are like, I don't believe in abortion. I don't believe in, women's rights. I don't believe in gay marriage. I don't believe in LGBTQS plus problems and challenges and opportunities. And therefore I'm going to be elected so that I can be a voice for that. But they then represent a riding that is progressive and bold and forward thinking. And what you get is an MP that is out of lockstep to its riding at the cost of the success of both the riding and the party. There's no winners in that system. And that's why it's so endlessly frustrating to me that Conservatives do not invest enough money, time, resources, effort, and true interest in selecting candidates that represent the forward momentum of the party. And for that reason, when Tamara Jansen packs her bags, when John Aldag beats her tonight, it's important that the next person that fills it isn't Tamara Jansen's brother. It's someone entirely new. It's someone who, it's someone who is entirely representative of a new vision of what conservatism, a pathway for the marketplace, environmental policies that actually address creating real tangible differences to our actual environment. It's about, giving, putting certain issues aside. Why did we never talk in this campaign about if Justin Trudeau wanted to pass a law or wanted to pass legislation to deal with this abortion access issue entirely, he has had the ability to do that the entire time he's been prime minister, and yet has selected not to, so that he can bait it as an election issue. You can't bait women's rights as an election issue and then call yourself a feminist. So these are the type of intellectual conversations that a new brand and a new breed of federal and provincial conservatives can bring to the landscape, and that work should begin tomorrow. And then get in the progressive conservatives that have been pushed out of their own party. Somebody go get Lisa Raitt right now from off the stage, the CBC, because she does not belong there. She belongs back in Milton or in some other riding where she can help to be a mentor to new conservatives who have progressive ideologies and give them a way to influence the National Policy Committee and the National Policy Book and the way in which elections are run.
Sorry,
of Milton, that was a lot.
No, speaking of Milton and Lisa Raitt's old riding, Adam Van Coverden, I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, who beat Lisa Raitt in the last election, has been declared the current MP and still the current MP for the riding of Milton. Before we do jump out here, I just want to do a quick update at 9:07 before we take another quick break. At 9:07, the party standings are: the Liberals have lost one seat, potentially, compared to where they were standing before the election was called. Conservatives are a gain of one seat. The Bloc Québécois is a loss of 3 seats, potentially, right now. The biggest news story of this election, I think, is the New Democrats are on the path of gaining 5 seats if they hold all the seats that they're currently projected leading in. The Green Party is losing 1 seat, and I was just checking that out. That is the Nanaimo Ladysmith, Paul Manley's riding. The Conservative candidate is beating him by a few hundred votes, but he is still beating him. And the Independent, which was Vancouver Granville, Jody Wilson-Raybould's riding, is lost. So here's the biggest news story of 2021. NDP, the unknown dark horse candidate in this election, is the NDP, and if they're picking up gains where they should be, we're at a minority government. No second guessing that. We're at a minority government. I'm not calling that yet, but that's my prediction for the next probably half hour, 40 minutes. Last word to you before we go for a quick 10-minute break.
Is it too early to be day drinking for tomorrow?
Let's do it. You drink for both of us because I can't.
Done.
So with that, we will be back at 9:20 in about 12 minutes. Keep your eyes tuned. We'll have some updated graphics. We're just going to go take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. Everyone, guys, have yourself an excellent 20-minute break. But remember, stay tuned here. Hit the subscribe button and give us a like. Thanks so much.
Okay, keep talking.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We have one thing before we do get started here, and that is that Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government will continue to govern this country in a minority situation. CTV, CBC, Global have all called that Justin Trudeau will form a minority government in the 44th general election, saving him for another, as in his own words, another 2 years until we go back to the polls. So Justin Trudeau continues on as the Prime Minister of Canada. I just want to take a moment here, and at 9:21 we are sitting, as you see the numbers on your screen have been changed, but they have been changed since I've updated it. 156 leading and elected for the Liberals, 124 for the Conservatives. Bloc Québécois are at 29 leading and elected. New Democrats are at 28 leading and elected. And the Greens are currently sitting at 2 leading and elected. As always, I'm bringing back our guest with the most information on conservative politics, Conservative Like Me podcast host, Jennifer Sanford. Jen, so I got to ask the question, what would you do with $600 million? Because I guess we found out what Justin Trudeau would do.
Call an election. Yes, it's important to remember that this election cost $600 million to earn us exactly into the same space that we were before. So I did a little creative Googling while you were talking, Chris. We as Canadians could take 376 trips with 2 friends on board the Richard Branson's Virgin
Galactic spaceship.
Spaceship 2. So that's 376 trips with friends. We could fund the annual budget of 4 of the largest cities in Massachusetts. The U.S. military has the MQ-9 Reaper drone. We could buy 6 of those. And if you're really looking to make a return on investment, think about it this way. All you movie buffs will love this. For $600 million, we could make Iron Man 4, 5, and 6. And if you think about how each Ironman has yielded a return on investment of $1 billion, we could have turned this into $3 billion and done something actually intellectual with it, like put in nutrition programs. Let's not talk about $10 a day daycare. Let's talk about free daycare. Let's talk about maybe universal pharmacare. Let's talk about this free dental madness that Jagmeet Singh talks about all the time. This is really important that all of us understand that this is an insurmountable amount of money. $600 million that we just spent on a vanity project to reelect the same person to do the same job. And I just feel sad about it. And if you consider right now, Chris, that Conservatives lead the popular vote, yep. Right? If we look at individual votes, more Canadians have issued a rebuke of Justin Trudeau, but have fallen victim to the electoral map, which feels so American to say.
I'm looking at the results. I want to talk about Calgary for a second, because we said we would be on here until most of the ridings would be called. But Elections Canada, CBC, Global, CTV seem to not want to let us go, because they have literally called every other riding besides Calgary Center and Calgary Skyview, which are the 2 ridings that these 2 hosts right now are sitting in and talking about. Calgary Skyview and Calgary Center are still too close to call, according to the predictors of the elections, whoever they are.
And look at Calgary Skyview, because you've got, don't say your vote doesn't matter. Do not say your vote doesn't matter, because the Conservative has 3,100 votes and the Liberal George Chahal has 3,019 votes. That's a vote difference of 79 votes. That's 79 votes that are going to decide that riding. That's madness.
81 for those Conservatives who actually like to do math. Ooh.
Oh, is it 81? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. I also never learned to read. So I think that's an important number. Now, I am surprised, and Chris, you made a good point when we were off the air about what's going to happen in Calgary Center, because I do believe with Greg McLean at 52% of the vote and Sabrina Grover at 30% of the vote, it doesn't matter, at 30% of the vote, like
I want, because
we should be knowing.
For those who don't know, this is Kent Hare's old riding, who's currently running for the mayor of the Calgary mayor.
I know, isn't that hilarious?
You and I will talk about that in the next break or after the show's done, because there's something that came up.
Ooh, there's news, guys.
Oh yeah. I'm so happy about that. Calgary Center and Calgary Skyview are two ridings that the Liberals needed to win if they wanted to form a majority government. It does not look like any seats in Saskatchewan or Alberta are going in the Liberal columns as of right now. If that's the case, if this is where the world is coming to, Justin Trudeau now has another issue on his hands of making a cabinet to try and appeal to the West, because we've realized now that Chrystia Freeland, even though she's born and raised in Peace River, means jack squat to Albertans. So
why do they have to form a cabinet that appeals to Alberta? Why not just look at where their votes came from and form a cabinet that appeals to those people? I mean, what is Justin Trudeau's incentive to work with Alberta?
There is none.
Honestly, I think we honestly have to ask this question, because I think everybody who voted Conservative or PCP or Maverick Party is asking that question tonight. What is his incentive to serve our best interests? We've just issued a complete rebuke, with the exception of Edmonton.
Yeah, which Griesbach is still leading in the NDP territory, and Strathcona has been called for Heather McPherson, the NDP MP for that area. I don't know. I always hope that people would be represented in each province, but like you said, 600.
For what reason? For what reason? Especially if this is Trudeau's last kick at this thing. Like, what is his incentive to work with Alberta? He'll have, and you have to admit that he's figured out a way to be incredibly resourceful. Look at the current mayor of Calgary. Look at Naheed Nenshi, directly in the pocket of Justin Trudeau. Those two people are just looking out for their own best interest, and they have figured out that they can re-engineer the system to just put Kenny to the side. So when you have those types of inroads that you can build with the municipal, which is becoming far more politically polarized than ever before. Whenever I hear a candidate say like, "Oh, we should never put party over," I'm like, "What? Are you new?" Like, municipalities are absolutely becoming polarized along party lines. And if they tell you they're not, they're lying to you. So ask your candidates when they come to your door. Especially, I'm looking at you, Calgary. You got an election in the next 30 days. And the other piece of this is that, like, if you can scrap out a conservative government that's made a commitment not to work with you by working with the municipalities, working with the mayors of the major cities, and completely isolating the rural communities whose vote you will never earn, like, don't you have it made in the shade? Then you just build a cabinet that's basically just talking heads that will do what you want them to do. Doesn't matter where they come from. I mean, Justin Trudeau has proven for himself that if a woman doesn't like what he has to say, they're just simply removed from the cabinet. So I don't think jurisdiction matters here.
Just for those who are listening, sorry to interrupt, but Maxime Bernier, the leader of the People's Party of Canada, has gone down in defeat. He got 20% of the vote in Beauce to Richard Leho's 48%. I will say this is a lower percentage for Richard in this election compared to 2019, where he got over 50%. So Maxime Bernier has gone down in defeat. Annamie Paul is in fourth place in Toronto Centre for the Green Party leader. Marcia Ian has got 50% of the vote. Liberal incumbent NDP Brian Chang has 23%, and Ryan Lester, who has run twice in Toronto Centre, has got 15% of the vote. Annamie Paul is going down in defeat in Toronto Centre. we are literally at the exact same place where we were 36 days ago.
No, because we're all more frustrated and tired. And
So
we've spent a lot of money that we could have all gone to space, honestly.
Exactly.
Or, like fed children, just saying.
So I gotta ask the question here now. Kenny is unpopular, and I'm looking provincially now. Kenny is unpopular. Trudeau is reelected in a minority situation. The Wild Rose Independence Party provincially is surging to about 11% polling, which, as we've been told tonight, polling means squat. But let's just put it out there. They're polling at 11%. Oh, just holding out there right now. Calgary Center has just been declared for Greg McLean. George Shahal has taken a 126 vote lead for the Liberals in Calgary's Skyview. So there still is a chance for that little blue island to be called for Little Red Island in Calgary to be called.
A Little Red Island,
so,
which would make the mayor very happy.
It would, because it would guarantee him a Senate seat. I mean,
you think so?
We're having a Senate election right now.
I think what's important to note is that let's just kind of look at these numbers as we're seeing them come in. You need 170 for a majority government. Currently, the Liberals are in the elected and leading category for 157. So it's important. And now I'm scared to do math on air, but that is 13 seats away. And we have some interesting flipping happening. If George Shahal, that's 1. John Aldag, 2. We've got some other interesting ones happening in the lower mainland. So, I mean, this will get really interesting to see. Is there going to be a backdoor deal with the NDP here? Like, oh man, if I was ever a political person right now, I would want to be Jagmeet Singh. Because if he's going to come up like 1, 2, the only thing you have to worry about is floor crossers, right? Can they get someone from a like, you're not going to get like an Elizabeth May to cross over and leave her own party. But if you come down to 1 or that is the other thing. If they give Elizabeth May speaker, she comes out of the math equation. Won't this be really interesting if he gets to like 168, 169? What starts to happen then? How much do we have curious math? And then we would have a situation where we could potentially have a Liberal majority government, despite the fact that more Canadians voted Conservative than Liberal.
It would be the
and
very
then
first
you're going
time.
to have nothing but nonstop conversations about proportional representation and changing the way in which we vote, which there'll be no incentive to change because the Liberals will be in power. It's like how Justin Trudeau's like, I'm open to voter reform. And it's like, I think you already promised that.
So with just under 50% of the polls reporting across Canada for the vote share, just to look at that right now, 34% of the people of Canada whose votes have been counted so far have voted for the Conservative Party of Canada. 32.5 have voted for the Liberal Party. 8.2 for the Bloc Québécois. 16.9 for the New Democrats. The Greens is at 2.1, and I will eat cow because I said 10%. You told me that I was up creek without a paddle. But the People's Party of Canada
has cracked 5%.
Is just at 5%, which is still well above what they did in the 2019 election. I think this was the one shot for them to win a seat, and it did not pan out. So you're right. If this election has taught us anything, voting changes need to happen, but proportional representation is not my want. It's ranked ballots. I want someone to represent me who has 50% of the vote.
Okay, so if we were to consider today, this is what I call dad math, because my father's on the Conservative Like Me podcast and always does all the hard math. This would be what John Sanford would say right now if he was with you, Chris. He'd say there are 35 million people that live in Canada. if we pretend that all of them are eligible to vote, because it's difficult to extrapolate those that are under 18 that are not eligible to vote. And we realize that only 6 million people of the 35 million eligible have voted. That's what we're at. That's what we're at if we look at these numbers. Now, does that go to 12 million? Is that half of us? Whatever. If we look at the numbers today, that means as of today, you're about to declare a government based on 16% of Canadians wanting this man as our prime minister.
Yep. I think we should move to the Australia method, make voting mandatory. I will be the first to admit that. You want taxes? You fucking go out and vote. Pardon my French, but
no, sir. No, sir. It's a freedom.
No.
Yeah.
Then you get votes like this. Then you have people. I guarantee you.
Can you even be a participant in this discussion? You wrecked your ballot.
Yes, I can, because I actually went out and voted. I went out to the ballot
but not
box.
for anything.
But I went. Yes, I did. I voted against all of them because none of them represented my values and my morals. On the show, I tell everyone to vote for the person that's going to represent your values and your morals at the end of the day. None of the people voted. None of the people that
no one is. You know that no one is tracking that information, right? Nobody's going to say, hey, I just want you to know that X amount of people ruined their ballots. Like, you know that no one's tracking your act of defiance.
I know, but I know I did it. And that's all that matters. I'm tracking the fact
but it doesn't effectuate change.
It does. It affects me.
How does it effectuate change? It affects you.
I can now go out to the people of Calgary and bitch and complain about this government. The people who did not even take a moment to get off their asses and go into the voting booth and actually put a ballot down, they don't have the right to say it. I'm sorry. This is a little bit of a... How do I say this correctly? As someone who is going to be covering news for a while, I do not want people to come to me and say, well, you're a liberal, you're a conservative, you're an NDP, or you're a Green.
Yeah.
Prove it. Prove that I've actually voted for you. Here's proof that I've never voted for you or anyone. I'm trying to cover my butt, and I know it might not look good. It does. So the Liberals have opened a lead in Calgary Skyview of 512 votes over the Conservatives. I will be the first to... I'm going to predict it right now. I'm going to call it. I'm probably going to be wrong, but I'm going to call it. George DeHaul is going to Ottawa. George DeHaul is going to Ottawa. And the only reason I say that is because Mayor Nenshi gave his full backing to him.
I'm going to say that it's going to come down to mail-in votes.
Oh, I didn't even look at that. That's right. I should have looked at that. Millwoods. Edmonton Millwoods. Tim Uppal won the riding in 2019 after Amarjeet Sohi lost. Amarjeet Sohi beat Tim Uppal in 2015. Ben Henderson had the backing of Don Iverson. He is a incumbent Calgary Edmonton councillor. There is a conservative lead of about 500 votes, so Millwoods is still too close to call. In Edmonton Center, James Cumming, the conservative incumbent MP, is still in the lead over Randy Bossino. That is a riding I'd be looking at as well. Edmonton Griesbach, the NDP is extending their lead over Kerry Diott by about 650 votes. These are ridings that I'm looking at, and if 3 seats flip to the opposition parties, that's a good night for progressives in this province, but we will see what happens. I'm just looking. No. I was going to say Cloverdale, Langley City. The Liberals have opened a lead of 541 seats, 41 votes. Tamara Jansen is the incumbent Conservative, and she is losing to John Aldrich. How happy are you? Aldag.
I'm just going to wait, because this is what happened in 2019 was John Aldag held it. And then in the last hour, it flipped to Tamara. the margin of victory for her was incredibly small. I think it's important to note that if we really do look at this lower mainland map, we've got a lot of red where they wanted to have red. I'm thinking of Stevenson, Richmond East. I'm thinking of Richmond Center, Vancouver, Granville, which of course was going to be such a big question with Jody Raybould Wilson gone. Were people going to feel loyal to the Conservatives, especially given, you know, her book that came out? You know, where was going to be the stronghold? Was she going to endorse a candidate? That was a big question there. Heading closer into the mainland, Surrey, Newton, you know, that's looking promising for red. There's a lot of pickup here. Jalna, Aldag, certainly Cloverdale, Langley City, Port Moody, Coquitlam. Conservatives believed that they could hold that. They believed that that was absolutely going to be one that they were going to win.
And I just want to talk about that for a second because, as I said during our break, this riding, Port Moody, Coquitlam, was one of the closest, if not the closest, ridings in 2019. Bonita Zarleo, I apologize. I know her. I've talked to her on Twitter. She is a popular councillor for the area. She ran in 2019. She lost by about 86 votes. The NDP have been in that riding. Jagmeet Singh has been in that riding. And this shows me that Aaron O'Toole's message on Lower Mainland is not doing well.
No, it's not.
Even with the flip on the environment, with the carbon tax, the carbon savings account, or however you want to call it, it's not resonating with Lower Mainland, and it's not resonating with the people of the 416, because I'm looking at the 416 right now, and it does not look good for the Conservatives to have a progressive leader.
Or is it, see, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater on this. I don't want to say, okay, we had a socially conservative in Andrew Scheer and we couldn't do it then, so we moved to a more progressive and that didn't work. There's a difference between the progressiveness and how you sell that progressiveness to the public. Go ahead, Chris.
Just happened right now. Miriam Monsef, Minister of Women's Affairs, has gone down in defeat. She has lost to the Conservative candidate, Michelle Ferrari, in the riding of Peterborough-Kawartha. This is huge. This, for those who might not know, Miriam during the election came out and said, "My brothers, my sisters," to the Taliban, and the Conservatives pounced on this issue. I am shocked at that because I'm from Ontario, I'm from that area, and there's a running joke in Ontario politics. The way Peterborough votes goes the nation, goes the province. So the message that Peterborough-Kawartha had did not sway the votes at the end of the day. So I'm shocked that happened. Ottawa South has just been called for the Liberals. Former Attorney General for the province of Ontario, Yasser Navik, has been declared the winner in Ottawa Centre. He is the Liberal candidate. This is Catherine McKenna's old riding. The NDP had held it before Catherine McKenna under Paul Dewar. I'm pleasantly surprised that happened. You want to jump in there? I thought and then the last one I want to talk about is, hold on. Kanata Carleton, the Liberals are still leading over the Conservatives in Kanata Carleton. Kanata Carleton is close to Carleton, which Pierre Poilievre is the MP for that riding. Kanata Carleton is also Karen McKinnon's old riding, the former leadership candidate against Justin Trudeau in 2013. But the Liberals are looking at keeping that seat. Go ahead, Jen.
No, I was just going to say, like, I know that there was a big interest in the Liberal Party of holding Ottawa Centre for Catherine McKenna. Of course, many people like you and I really believed that was going to be Mark Carney's big opening, and we're quite surprised when he didn't run. So I think that would be a loss for the Liberals if they cannot hold on to that Calgary Centre seat. That being said, as we've been talking, Ottawa Centre. Apologies. As we've been talking, I've been watching the results, Liberals flipping between 157 to 158, 157, 158. So it's important to note there's a lot of of tight races here, a lot of tight races. Canadians really were not sure who they wanted to elect their government. So
I just want to jump to Aurora Oaks Ridge, Richmond Hill, which is the former deputy leader of the Conservative Party, Miss Leona Alzerleave, who was the former Liberal in 2015, flipped to the Conservatives in 2017, was reelected as a Conservative, and she is trailing the Liberals in that riding right now. So Leona looks like she's going to be a 2-term MP as well. This is like the 416 has not been broken. Even the only one riding that could potentially go against the Liberals is Davenport. Bravo, the NDP candidate, is well liked, but also this is Jack Layton's old riding. No, that's Danforth. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, no, I apologize. As I literally said that, we are now at a statistical tie. 3,285 votes and 3,285 votes for the NDP and the Liberal vote candidates.
In that riding.
In that riding, yes. I'm just looking at some of the other ridings around. Not much. Oh, Annamie Paul has been defeated in her riding of Calgary Center. She got
Toronto Center.
Wow, we are really into the whole Calgary
We
Center
are terrible at this. We are terrible at this.
This is why we're not on CBC yet. Maybe next time. 2024, we're going to be on CBC.
The one guy listening, we're so sorry.
Marcia Len has been reelected, and Annamie Paul barely cracked 10% in. Well, so far, there's still over 90 polls out reporting. Annamie Paul has to give her concession speech tonight, and that has to say, sorry, guys, I'm leaving.
Yeah, it has to. Yeah, of course.
So we could probably look at these all night, and you probably don't want us to be talking like this, guys. But this is an election to be an end-all in election. $600 million to literally get absolutely nowhere. Jen, your last words before we wrap up, because it is 10 o'clock. I don't think much is going to be changing between now and 11 o'clock. But what are your last thoughts on this shit show of an election?
I think that my last thoughts are this: who resigns tonight? Annamie Paul is done. She's out. And then the question becomes, does Erin O'Toole have the ability to not do what Andrew Scheer did, which is to try to hang on, and then there's pressure from within the party, and then he resigns later, and then he's going to sit as a backbencher? Like, does he have the ability to say, it's me, it's not me, and thank my family, and thank you for your time? So like, O'Toole cannot mount another, we're going to have to find a new leader. That's really, really disheartening when you consider that more Canadians wanted O'Toole as their prime minister than Justin Trudeau, but can't mount a defeat. So Jagmeet Singh, cartwheels, obviously. What a great night for him. And then, of course, there's this thing around what now do the PPC and the Mavericks do? Do they see tonight as a success or not? I believed firmly that Maxime Bernier was, a fun narrative story, and he really gave a place for rural people and people who are frustrated with the current state and mechanism and procedurals of politics to belong. But there's no salience here. There's no threat here. There might be one, maybe two ridings where the PPC harmed the Conservatives. But again, like I've said, we can't just associate that, those votes were stolen from Conservatives, because you can't say that those votes would naturally have gone to Conservatives. I think those would have been apathetic votes. They would have been spoiled votes. They would have been people who wouldn't have voted at all. So, I think I'm thinking a lot about the leadership and where we go from here. I'm thinking about the bloodbath that will be the Conservative Party in terms of how you project this as the winner or loss. Because like I said, there were good people behind this campaign, good, hard, policy-minded people behind this campaign. I liked this policy book. So where do the Conservatives go from here? There's going to be such a Well, you know, when you drive a car down the road and you swerve and then you realize you swerved too quickly, so you overcorrect and then you roll your vehicle. I'm
Yeah.
worried that that could be the outcome. They're going to say we got to go all the way back to where we came from, and we're going to go through a period of disassociation where then I have to spend all of my available money to put out a third season of Conservative Like Me podcast, which is not my favorite choice this election. Good day.
Whoa! You're spending money, girl. Come on. Joke.
I know.
Joke.
How dare
I?
But I think the question becomes like, Canadians were not prepared to hold Justin Trudeau account for his decision to have an election during a pandemic, and for a lot of the challenge. I wrote this on Twitter earlier. Just a reminder that today's election is not a merit ribbon for who got us here. It's who's the next leader to get us through the next challenges. We have some like really tough, like inflation is going to be a thing. Trade is going to be a thing. Our international profile is going to be a problem. I don't believe that this was the guy to get us to those next goalposts. I don't believe there's the right kind of depth in his bench. I think he should have been held to greater account. I feel terrible for people like Jody Raybould Wilson, who wrote a whole book about it. And it's like, it didn't matter. And I think that that's disappointing. And I think it's incongruent with our Canadian values. But I think we got to see, I'm interested to see what your hot wash is going to look like tomorrow, Chris.
Well, I think because, I'm gonna keep us going here for about another 5-10 minutes because I want to ask this question. What does this say about Canadians that 3 ethics scandals, sexual allegations, blackface, and we give him another minority government? Yet again, our system is set up this way that the person with one more vote in the ridings wins. If you have 9,000 votes in one riding and 50 votes in another riding, if that person with 50 votes wins, that person still wins. If that person with 9,000 votes wins, they win. That's where this is coming out. The Conservatives are running up numbers in their ridings that they're strong in. Rural Alberta, they're going to run up numbers. What does this say about 416? What does it say about Lower Mainland BC? What does it say about Montreal, where ethics scandals, which Quebec is well known for, sexual allegations of misconduct in your cabinet, blackface, and yet 2015, 2019, 2021, the people of Canada have given Justin Trudeau another mandate, whether we agree with it or not, to govern this country. What does that say about us?
Yeah. So I think that you're complicating it by saying, like, what does it mean about our segmentation and what does it mean about the people here and the people there? But we've seen this before in the psychology of politics. And it's really quite simple, Chris. It's this idea that when faced with a bad idea versus a completely unknown idea, people will consciously choose the bad idea. It falls into this category of the devil I know, right? We saw this in American politics. We see this replicate in places where there's a lot of money in the government infrastructure and places where there is no money in the government infrastructure. And that is what happens when you have a candidate or a party that stutters. So Justin Trudeau says, we want $10 a day daycare. They don't. And O'Toole goes, well, no, it's not like that. It's, some people don't work 9 to 5 and some people, some people don't, but we do ultimately want that, but we want to do it as a tax thing. And people just are like, stop. All I heard was we want $10 a day daycare and you don't. And then on the environment, it's like, I want to tax carbon to reduce carbon. And that's my policy. And they don't. They don't want to do anything for the environment. And Aaron O'Toole's like, well, no. We have this tax credit system and it goes into a checking account. And then it's that money is used to, and people are like, whoa, stop. All I heard was that they want to do something about the environment and you don't. So this is the problem, is you get hammered on these talking points. And then when you see fringe people, when you see the Bernies, when you see the Sloans, when you see the Tamara Jansons, when you see the party fringe having a disproportionately loud voice in the party, you think, yeah, that's what you are. I mean, you have to remember that old Hungarian proverb: if 3 people tell you you're a horse, buy a saddle. And that's what the Liberal government did. albeit they did it poorly, but they still did it. This is what this party is. Right? Don't tell me you want 90% vaccines. You won't vaccinate your own people. And Aaron O'Toole, rather than saying, but it's about choice. It's about convincing people. It's about motivating them with good information and letting them own their decisions. It's about bringing this. Instead, he was like, well, no, like, I don't think I have to disclose this. And I don't think it's you just, every time you trip over your own message, you allow the other people to say, I want this for you. And they don't. And that's really what they sold people on. And people had to look at, okay, a series of bad ideas, which is exactly how I would define Justin Trudeau in one sentence, a series of bad ideas versus ideas we don't get, don't know, can't sell, don't resonate. And what we saw Canadians do was say, I'll pick the devil I know. I'll pick the devil I know.
Devil I know, unfortunately, because we are now in a situation where you think the last 2 years have been hard on Justin Trudeau about people stonewalling ethics violations? Just wait.
Yeah, I don't care about the leader. Justin Trudeau has never believed that he plays by the same rule book. You even see this. There's so many examples of him being like, let me yank the silver spoon out of my mouth to try to, resonate and empathize with everyday Canadians. Where I think we have a greater problem is that we have significantly complicated problems to solve, like trade and inflation, the cost of living. These are real issues. I couldn't believe it when I was on your podcast after the election, and Rob Tremblay, who's running a Liberal campaign, said inflation is not an issue. Like, are you crazy? I'm still mad about that, because it is absolutely the affordability of our Canadian experience is at stake here. And we couldn't even have a dialogue about it. Indigenous issues are a problem. We can have a dialogue about it.
So is this Justin Trudeau's win or Aaron O'Toole's loss in this election?
Oh no, it's always a win when you get to be selfish and be rewarded for it. The narcissism is rewarded. Therefore, Justin Trudeau is the winner.
Okay, I get it. I understand. I see where you're coming from. I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, if I was the Conservatives right now, Aaron O'Toole should have won this election. Hands down. Plain and simple. Hands down, he should have won this election. He did not. I don't know what to say. I don't know. At the end of the day, we are here. We are at almost 10 o'clock, and that's where we were going to go to, because my voice is getting hoarse. I have to rest up because I have debates in 2 days, which I have to moderate with Ward 11 at 7 o'clock on the Cross Border Interview podcast, so please tune in. But thank you, Jen. Thank you. We will dissect this. We will get to the bottom of this. We will talk about this probably tomorrow, the next day after that. We will probably talk about this for 12 years from now. Who knows what's going to happen, but at the end of the day, the people have voted and the people have spoken. We want the same. We want the exact same. We just want a few chairs changed to who seats where and who's going to sit where. We want the same. And at 9:59 Mountain Standard Time, the results are as followed. And this is where we'll leave off. For the Liberals, they are leading and elected in 156 ridings. Conservatives leading and elected in 123 ridings. The Bloc Québécois are leading and elected in 29 ridings. The New Democrats are leading and elected in 28 ridings. If the NDP can just pick up 2 more seats and kick the Bloc Québécois to 4th place, I'd be very happy. And the Greens are leading. I'm not going to say elected because they have not elected any candidate yet, not even Elizabeth May, in 2 ridings, Kitchener Center and Saanich Gulf Islands in BC. The People's Party are the non-factor, but here we are, $6 million later, exactly where we were 36 days ago. That was a fun break, eh? Well, anyway, for me at the Cross Border Interview Podcast, thank you so much for tuning in, listening. The audio version of the show will be released in about a few hours. Jen, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Chris. This was a great night.